Chapter 21:11. The noise and discussion around them grew louder and louder. Lu Tingxiao looked at these so-called shocking photos. His expression did not change at all from the start to the end. He looked at Ning Xuelua calmly and said quietly, "Thank you, Miss Ning, for bringing Xiaoxi these precious memories today." "What? Precious memories?" Ning Xuelua was stunned for a moment. In the next second, she heard Lu Tingxiao continue, "The wild man Miss Ning is talking about is me." After a moment of strange silence, everyone's eyes almost popped out of their sockets. Huh. WH. What does Lu Tingxiao mean? The wild man is him. Ning Xuelua's mind was in a mess. Her eyes were filled with disbelief and fear. "What did you say? CEO Lu, this woman is obviously pregnant with a bastard child. How could it be?" Lu Jingli rolled his eyes and laughed coldly. "Haha, this lady. First you called my brother a wild man. Then you called my little treasure a bastard child. I admire your courage." Lu Jingli's words caused an even bigger uproar. Little treasure? Lu Jingli means that the child Ning she was pregnant with was little treasure? Damn. Little treasure's biological mother is Ning Shi? Just now, Ning Xuelua said that Ning Shi was 18 years old. According to the timing, it really matches. In the midst of the noisy discussion, Lu Tingxiao's cold gaze suddenly swept across everyone present. That terrifying pressure came from all directions, and immediately, everyone subconsciously fell silent. The entire venue was so quiet that you could hear a pin drop. After a while Lu Tingxiao said, "Everyone, I'm sorry. Because of my negligence, I've caused some unnecessary misunderstandings. Ning Shi and I have known each other for a long time, but because of some misunderstandings, we were separated for a few years. After Xiaoxi returned to the country, we got back together again." Lu Tingxiao paused, then continued, "Little treasure is born of me and Ning Shi." When she heard this, Ning Xuelua was stunned at first, then she laughed uncontrollably. "Ha ha ha. CEO Lu, I didn't think that you would actually say that a bastard child is yours just to save face. It's really an eye-opener." Lu Jingli's tone was as if he was looking at an idiot as he said faintly, "Miss, your stupidity is the real eye-opener. My brother planted the seed himself. How could he not know? Previously, due to some procedures, my sister-in-law and Xiaobao did a DNA test. Do you think everyone is as stupid as you? This is impossible. That's impossible." Ning Xuelua's back stiffened, but her tone was firm. Lu Jingli raised an eyebrow. "Oh, impossible? Miss, why are you so sure that it's impossible?" Ning Xuelua was suddenly speechless. Obviously, she could not tell him the reason. She was the one who had drugged Ning Shi. She was the one who had arranged for the two gigolos. How could this be? No, that's not right. At that time, the two gigolos said that when they arrived, they realized that Ning Shi had gone into the wrong room. The person who had sex with her was a stranger. Could it be? Could that man be Lu Tingxiao? When she thought about this, Ning Xuelua's face turned pale, and her body started to tremble violently, as if she had just found out something extremely terrifying. This possibility was simply tearing her apart. At this moment, an old man suddenly walked out from the crowd. Chapter 21:12. At this moment, an old man suddenly walked out of the crowd. He looked at Ning Xuelua with extreme displeasure and said sternly, "Miss, I see that you're still so young. How can you create such rumors and slander the innocence of others out of thin air? I did the paternity test between Mrs. Lu and Xiaobao myself. Xiaobao is 100% Mrs. Lu's biological child. If anyone has any questions, feel free to come to me." The person who spoke was the old director of the Imperial Military Hospital. He was the one who treated the head of state. His words were undoubtedly a symbol of authority. As soon as Director Zhao stepped out, everyone's doubts were dispelled, and they came to a sudden realization. Zhuang Liaoyuan watched as Director Zhao stepped forward, then glanced at the old man beside him, who had been calm the entire time. He finally understood how Lu Tingxiao had convinced the old man back in the hospital, and why the old man had accepted Xiaobao so easily. So that was it. The similarities between Xiaobao and Ning Shi, the intimacy between mother and son, and Xiaobao's shooting talent, which was the same as the Zhuang families, were all explained. The discussion around them suddenly became louder. No one had expected the truth to be like this. At the same time, the way they looked at Ning Xuelua changed. It's true. Xiaobao's biological mother is really Ning Xi? Holy shit. No wonder. I was wondering why the mother and son got along so well. They were like real mother and son. It turns out that they are biological children. This Ning Xuelua is so funny. She came here to sow discord without knowing anything. She even called Lu Tingxiao a wild man. She called the little prince a bastard. Ning Xi is also quite pitiful. Not only was she swapped, but she also had such a shameless person who took her place. Her parents are also unreliable. No wonder the Zhuang family only recognizes Ning Xi and completely ignores the Ning family, and Ning Xuelua still ignores her? This kind of person should be killed by a car. It's the first time I've seen such a vicious woman. She killed her adoptive mother's fetus, and she's still not reconciled. Seeing that Ning Xi is living a good life now, I'm afraid she's not reconciled. She's going to continue to harm Ning Xi and create such vicious rumors on an occasion like today. It's as disgusting as maggots in one's bones. There were disgusted and disgusting gazes all around, as if they were looking at a pile of disgusting maggots crawling on garbage. Ning Xuelua's face went blank. Her legs gave way, and she fell to the ground. In the past, in order to obtain the Ning family, in order to fight over Su Yan, she had racked her brains. But in the end, Lu Tingxiao and Ning Xi got together. The person who slept with Ning Xi was Lu Tingxiao. What made her even more incredulous was that Ning Xi's child had been killed by a car. Why was this happening? That child didn't die. How could he not be dead? How could this be? No matter how she thought about it, she couldn't figure out how things had turned out this way. Originally, she was prepared to die with Ning Xi, so she risked defending the Lu family to make a scene. Anyway, she had nothing left. She could never let Ning Xi sit in the position of Mrs. Lu with peace of mind. But now, it's over. Everything was over. At the entrance of the venue, several uniformed policemen walked in solemnly and walked straight in the direction of Ning Xuelua. Miss, you're suspected of drug smuggling and participating in many illegal activities abroad. Please come with us. End of update. Countdown to the finale. Last wave of monthly votes. Chapter 2113. Lu Tingxiao knew that Ning Xi valued affection the most. She didn't kill Ning Xuelua for the sake of her adoptive parents. But that woman was still unrepentant. Since Ning Xi couldn't do it, he would do it. Late at night, the birthday party finally came to an end after all the guests had left. As soon as the party was over, Yan Rui and Lu Chongshan stopped Lu Jingli. Jingli, what's going on? Is Ning Xi really Xiaobao's mother? Yan Rui asked anxiously. Lu Jingli nodded seriously. That night 7 years ago, the girl who was with my brother was actually sister-in-law. At that time, sister-in-law was drugged by Ning Xuelua. Originally, Ning Xuelua had arranged for someone to ruin sister-in-law's innocence. But sister-in-law accidentally walked into the wrong room and entered my brother's room. Yan Rui and Lu Chongshan looked at each other. They didn't expect that there would be such a coincidence in this world. Well, as you know, my brother was also drugged at that time. He and my sister-in-law were delirious and had no memory of what happened that night. My brother and I found out the truth nearly 2 years ago. Then we did a paternity test and confirmed that our guess was right. The girl who was with my brother that night was indeed my sister-in-law. However, because what happened back then had caused too much harm to sister-in-law, my brother didn't dare to confess to her that it was him. That's why he didn't tell her the truth until Ning Xuelua came out today. Then Lu Jingli explained to them why Ning Xi got pregnant and why she didn't abort the child. The more Yan Rui and Lu Chongshan listened, the angrier they became. Ning Xuelua is insane. Fortunately, it was your brother. If not, Yan Rui couldn't imagine it. It was a great blow to my sister-in-law. She has been living in the shadow for years. She kept rejecting my brother, not because she wanted to play hard to get. It was because of this that she refused to accept any man. Lu Jingli said seriously. Hearing their son's words, Lu Chongshan and Yan Rui were full of guilt. Yan Rui sighed. Xiaoxi is a good girl. It's not her fault. As Yan Rui spoke, her face lit up again. Now it's great, everyone is happy. It was great that Xiaoxi was Xiaobao's biological mother. Xiaobao will be so happy. Hearing this, Lu Chongshan frowned and said in a low voice, "But Jingli just said that Xiaoxi has always hated that man. Now that she knows that man is Tingxiao." At this point, the three of them fell into silence. Dear Town Flower House. When they got home, Ningxi finally had a chance to talk to Lu Tingxiao alone. In the courtyard, the two of them stood quietly under a bush of roses. Ningxi's expression was a little fatigued. Today was the first time she had made an official appearance as Mrs. Lu. She had not expected so many things to happen. But fortunately, everything had been resolved without any mishaps. Ningxi sat down on a chair. "Lu Tingxiao, how did you convince Director Zhao to help you?" After she woke up from her vegetative state, apart from Annie, Director Zhao had been taking care of her body. Therefore, she could be considered to be familiar with Director Zhao. She knew that he valued his reputation and professional integrity the most. He would never cheat for others. Lu Tingxiao must have spent a lot of effort to convince him. Chapter 21:14. Hearing Ningxi's question, Lu Tingxiao's fingers tightened slightly, and he remained silent for a while. He had expected this. Although everyone believed that Xiaobao was her biological son, Ningxi thought it was arranged by him. After all, Ningxi was the least likely person to believe this fact. "Sweetheart." Seeing that the man didn't speak, Ningxi looked at him suspiciously. At this moment, the aura around the man had frozen into ice, but his body seemed to be injected with turbulent volcanic magma, almost burning him up. Ningxi noticed that something was wrong with Lu Tingxiao, and her expression became slightly solemn. "What's wrong? What's wrong?" The roses above their heads withered in the night wind. She didn't know how long it had been. The man finally said, "Xiaoxi, I didn't arrange it. Director Zhao's words are true." Ningxi's mind went blank for a second, as if she couldn't understand what Lu Tingxiao meant. "What? I did a paternity test for you and Xiaobao, and the results were true." Lu Tingxiao took a deep breath, took out a report from his arms, and handed it to the girl. "Xiaoxi, you are indeed Xiaobao's biological mother." Ningxi took the report from Lu Tingxiao and stared at the results at the end of the report dully. The next second, her pupils suddenly contracted and her mind went blank. Based on the test results of the 19 STR loci, it could be seen that Ningxi's genes met the genetic conditions of being Lu Qingyu's biological mother, and the probability of their parentage was calculated to be 999,999. According to the results of DNA analysis, Ningxi was Lu Qingyu's biological mother. How? How could it be? Ningxi opened her mouth, but couldn't say a word. Lu Tingxiao seemed to be afraid that he would lose the courage to speak again, so he immediately continued. "Xiaoxi, Xiaobao is our child. He is our child." In fact, the reason why Ningxiula could appear so smoothly was partly because he deliberately connived with her. In this way, he forced himself not to escape anymore. Ningxi felt as if she was in a dream, and everything in the dream was upside down. Her brain was in a mess, and she couldn't tell whether it was a dream or reality. How could it be? My child, the child is dead, is dead." Lu Tingxiao's thin lips tightened. "Although I still don't know why, the truth is that he is not dead. He is Xiaobao. He's little Bao. That child is little Bao. Little Bao is my child." Ningxi was in a trance. "Lu Tingxiao. Yes, it's our child. Our." Lu Tingxiao closed his eyes and said in a trembling voice, "I'm sorry. Xiaoxi, I'm sorry. I've known about this for more than a year. But I can't say it to you. I can't tell you. The one who hurt you, the one who made you feel pain and despair for so long, is me. I was afraid that you would leave me." That proud man actually said the word afraid to her at this moment. "Sorry, that person was me." After the man said this, he just stood there quietly, the light around him dimming, like a person waiting for the sentence of death, and in an instant, all the vitality had been sucked out. Chapter 21:15. Time slowly ticked by. Lu Tingxiao's face turned paler and paler, and his blood turned colder and colder. His fingers were clenched into fists. At this moment, a burst of sweet breath suddenly assaulted him, His cold lips suddenly softened. That warm voice with a trace of salty tears, pressed against his lips, sounded in this endless night. Fortunately, it's you. In this world, there's nothing more beautiful than this. The flames subsided, and the ashes turned into soil. Suddenly, flowers blotted out the sky and covered the earth. Lu Tingxiao hugged the girl in his arms tightly and kissed her deeply. He wanted to melt the person in his arms into his bones and blood. This was the most beautiful words he had heard in his life. The most beautiful words. His girl always moved and surprised him time and time again. Under the moonlight, the two quietly snuggled together. I'm sorry. I should have told you earlier. Lu Tingxiao kissed the top of the girl's head. Ningxi nodded in agreement. Yes, if you had told me earlier, we wouldn't have been so conflicted. You didn't care when you found out about me. Why would I leave you because of this? Besides, it's not anyone else, it's you, my husband. I can't be more than happy. Besides, you were also cheated by Lu Jingli back then. Lu Jingli, who was hiding in the corner and eavesdropping, thought to himself, how can my baby get shot in the back? Well, at such an exciting moment, he might as well get shot in the back. Fortunately, Xiao Sisi did not divorce his brother, otherwise he would be dead. Listening to the girl's gentle words, Lu Tingxiao felt as if his whole body was soaked in warm water. His internal organs that had been burned just now quickly recovered, and his heart was filled with joy, as if he had survived a disaster. It's my fault. Ningxi knew and understood Lu Tingxiao's feelings too well. Because he cared too much about someone, even the smartest person would fall into such a state of anxiety. There's another reason I didn't tell you, Lu Tingxiao said in a slightly low voice. What is it? Ningxi subconsciously felt that what Lu Tingxiao was going to say next should be very important. I've been looking into Xiaobao's matter. I want to find out who sent Xiaobao to the Lu family, and what his purpose was. Ningxi's eyes lit up. Have you found anything? Lu Tingxiao's tone deepened. Not yet, but I found an important clue. I found out that a part of the hospital's surveillance footage was cut out. As long as we can restore this part of the footage, we might be able to find out who the culprit is. Originally, I planned to tell you everything after the truth is revealed. If everything goes according to plan, the footage should be restored in a few days. Ningxi looked serious. Who could it be? Lu Tingxiao was silent. Even he had no clue about this. Mom! A voice suddenly came from behind. Ningxi abruptly turned around, and then saw Xiaobao standing nervously behind her, his big eyes staring at her without blinking. Looking at the little bun in front of her, Ningxi's eyes suddenly turned red. Baby! Xiaobao wiped his eyes with the back of his hand, and immediately threw himself at Ningxi. Mom! Are you really my mom? Did mommy give birth to Xiaobao? Well, yes, I'm Xiaobao's mother. My mother gave birth to Xiaobao. As soon as she finished speaking, she felt her shoulder wet and her heart ached. Is it true? Xiaobao raised his red eyes and stared at his father in front of him. His eyes were as fragile glass. Chapter 21:16. Lu Tingxiao squatted down and rubbed his son's little head with his broad palm. It's true. You're your mother's and my child. After getting his father's affirmation, the little fellow's flickering eyes suddenly shone like a bright pearl. His gaze was unusually firm. Xiaobao knew it. From the first time I saw mommy, I knew that mommy was Xiaobao's mommy. Ningxi looked at the adorable little bun in front of her, and her eyes became slightly wet. She excitedly rubbed the little bun into her arms. Oh, baby, quickly pinch me. Am I dreaming? I actually gave birth to such a cute, adorable, intelligent, and talented baby. I'm really amazing. The little bun didn't pinch Ningxi. Instead, he kissed Ningxi's cheek with sparkling eyes. Xiaobao also feels like he's dreaming. Mommy, who shines like a princess and is as beautiful as a rose, is actually Xiaobao's mommy. Xiaobao is so happy. Xiaobao is also amazing. Looking at the mother and son, the corners of Lu Tingxiao's mouth turned up. He chuckled softly, and his brows were full of tenderness. As for Lu Jingli, who was hiding in the dark, he was about to vomit to death. Fuck. That's enough, you two. How could you boast like that? He had been so worried and rushed over to save the situation. But in the end, he had come to be abused. All right, The two at home were still anxiously waiting for him. He had to hurry and report the good news. Late at night in the bedroom, Ningxi gently sang to coax the little bun to sleep. The little fellow clutched the corner of her clothes sleepily and didn't let go. Ningxi leaned over and kissed the little bun's forehead. Baby, sleep. Mommy will always be here. Good night. The little fellow murmured in a daze. Mommy, good night. The little bun rubbed his eyes and looked at Lu Tingxiao. He murmured again in a daze. Good night. Daddy. Lu Tingxiao suddenly froze when he heard the word daddy from Xiaobao, as if he couldn't react at all. Looking at Lu Tingxiao's rare stunned expression, Ningxi raised her eyebrows slightly and chuckled. Sweetheart, don't tell me this is the first time Xiaobao has called you daddy? Lu Tingxiao. It was indeed the first time he had been called daddy. Ningxi didn't know whether to laugh or cry. Is it really the first time? Lu Tingxiao. Yes, he was in such a miserable state. Puffed. This seemed a little tragic. Ningxi held back her laughter and kissed Lu Tingxiao's lips to comfort him. Don't be sad. Xiaobao will definitely start to call you in the future. Lu Tingxiao leaned over and kissed her back. Yes, thanks to madam. Ningxi raised her head and looked at the man beside her. She blinked and suddenly said, Lu Tingxiao, let's find a time to make it public? Lu Tingxiao was startled when he heard this. Oh, that's exactly what I meant. I want to make it completely public. Lu Tingxiao's throat tightened. Are you all right? Ningxi analyzed. My fan base is stable now, and I can start to transform. Announcing my marriage at this time won't have much impact on me. Instead, it's good for my transformation. Lu Tingxiao's voice was slightly hoarse. Okay. Ningxi smiled and kissed her sweetheart's handsome face. Then I'll start preparing now. If everything goes well, after I finish my work and sign the contract with Shen Mian, I can start preparing. Thank you, madam. Chapter 2117. After the birthday party, Ningxi invited Tang Lang, Tang Yi and Feng Xiaoxiao out for a big meal. Actually, the big meal was just an excuse. She just wanted to show off to the three singles that she had given birth to such an adorable son. Also, she wanted the three of them to do her a favor. She wanted to see if they could find out who had sent Xiaobao to the Lu family. If even Lu Tingxiao couldn't find out who it was, no one in the world could. But it was good to have more hope. After that, Ningxi and Lu Tingxiao got busy, while waiting for Lu Jingli's news. The recovery of that surveillance video seemed to have encountered some trouble, and there was no breakthrough for a long time. In addition, Xiaobao was sick and had a fever during this period, so Ningxi's mood was more or less affected. As long as that incident was not solved, she would never be at ease. After all, she didn't even know whether the other party was a friend or a foe. Why did that person know that Xiaobao was Lu Tingxiao's son when she and Lu Tingxiao didn't know? And why did that person send Xiaobao to the Lu family? If the person who sent Xiaobao back to the Lu family was someone who knew the truth, it was purely out of kindness and good intentions. There was no reason for them to deliberately hide their identity. There were too many unexplainable mysteries about this incident. As Ningxi thought about these things, she gently patted Xiaobao, who was blushing on the bed. She glanced at the thermometer and felt even more frustrated. 385, he still has a fever. Lu Tingxiao held Ningxi's shoulders and comforted her. Don't worry. The doctor said that children are prone to colds and fevers in this season. It's just a minor illness. Ningxi nodded. I know. But she was still troubled by that incident, and it was inevitable that she would be affected. Seeing Ningxi's troubled look, Lu Tingxiao sighed. He regretted telling her so early. I heard from Lu Jingli that the surveillance footage will be repaired in 3 days at most. Ningxi took a deep breath. Okay. Everything would be revealed in 3 days. However, before Lu Jingli could get the results, something happened to Xiaobao. He had thought it was just a common cold and fever, but the fever kept coming back. Xiaobao had been like this before, because he was traumatized. Ever since Ningxi appeared, he hadn't been like this for a long time. But now, it seemed that a similar situation had occurred again. He had a fever that could not be cured. This time, it was useless even if Ningxi stayed by Xiaobao's side. In the room, everyone's expression was somewhat solemn. Lu Jingli grabbed his hair anxiously. It doesn't make sense. Xiaobao just found out that Xiaoxin is his biological mother and is happy. He has been happy these days. It's impossible for him to have a high fever because of psychological factors. Dean Zhao said in a deep voice, I've already done a detailed physical examination on Lil Bao. All of Lil Bao's indicators are normal. There's nothing wrong with him. How is it possible that the fever doesn't subside? There must be a problem somewhere. Ningxi was flustered as she held Xiaobao in her arms. The little fellow's breathing was rapid and his face was flushed. These past few days, his spirit was getting worse and worse, and he was sleeping more and more. Director Zhao thought for a moment and said, Don't be too anxious. It's not uncommon for children to have this condition. If the fever doesn't subside by tomorrow, bring the child to the hospital for another checkup. Lu Tingxiao nodded. All right. Chapter 2118. Lu Tingxiao and Ningxi stayed with Xiaobao all night. The next morning, Ningxi suddenly opened her eyes and found that she had fallen asleep. She hurriedly got up and went to check on Xiaobao. How is Xiaobao? Don't worry. His fever has subsided, Lu Tingxiao hurriedly said. Ningxi heaved a sigh of relief. That's great. Lu Tingxiao's eyes dimmed. No one knew what he was thinking, but he looked relaxed and comforted her. You are too nervous. Ningxi nodded. I think so. She was under a lot of pressure. After Xiaobao's fever subsided, he didn't have a recurrent fever like before. He was fine for 2 days in a row. However, no one expected that on the third day, Xiaobao's condition suddenly became serious. Although he didn't have a fever, he somehow fell into a coma and was extremely weak. Ningxi and Lu Tingxiao sent him to the capital military hospital overnight. The results of the second full-body examination came out, but no problem was found. Looking at Xiaobao lying on the bed with a respirator, Ningxi took out her cell phone with trembling hands. I'll ask Annie to have a look. She had thought it was just a common cold and fever, but she didn't expect it would suddenly develop like this. At the door of the ward, Ningxi was about to make a phone call when she heard a voice behind her. Little bastard, are you sick? Yunshin. Ningxi looked at the man, who suddenly appeared in the corridor in surprise. As always, the man had a head full of arrogant white hair and wore a black shirt, which made his originally fair skin seem even more white and translucent. Seeing Ningxi's surprised expression, the man raised his right middle finger, which was wrapped up exaggeratedly. I was pricked by a needle. Annie went out to pick herbs and was not there. Yi forced me to come to the hospital. He sounded very aggrieved. Not only Tang Yi and Feng Xiaoxiao, but also Tang Lang was there. Since the temporary truce between Yunshin and Lu Tingxiao, Tang Lang and Tang Yi often hung out and fought. Tang Yi wore a pair of glasses and had a cold face. Feng Xiaoxiao and Tang Lang stood there with their arms crossed, the corners of their mouths twitching speechlessly. Let's not talk about how you got pricked by a needle out of nowhere. What's there to feel aggrieved about? It's not like I don't know about your weird physique. Once you're injured, you bleed like you're on your period. Xiaobao is sick. Feng Xiaoxiao glanced at the little fellow in the ward. What's going on? Xiaobao's fever hasn't healed yet? Tang Lang asked. Ningxi looked a bit pale. She shook her head and said, Yes, he had a recurring high fever. His fever finally subsided 2 days ago, but now he suddenly fell ill again. The hospital has checked him twice, but found no reason. I'm going to ask Annie to come and see Xiaobao. Yunshin glanced at the little bun in the ward. He narrowed his eyes and murmured, This situation seems familiar. What? Ningxi's expression tightened. You've seen it? Where have I seen it before? I have to see the little bastard's condition first to be sure, Yunshin said. Ningxi frowned. She didn't believe him. She had never heard that he could treat patients. Tisk, looks like sister-in-law doesn't trust me? Forget it then. At this moment Lu Tingxiao said, It's okay. Let him see. After Lu Tingxiao spoke, Ningxi immediately nodded in relief. Oh, then hurry up and look. Yunshin was speechless. He suddenly didn't want to watch it anymore. Chapter 2119. In the end, he entered the ward reluctantly. Ningxi and the others stood aside nervously, waiting for Yunshin's result. Yunshin asked about Xiaobao's condition casually. Then he lifted Xiaobao's clothes and looked at him. Then he narrowed his eyes and said, "He's not sick but poisoned." "What did you say?" Ningxi and Tang Lang's expressions changed. Tang Yu was also surprised. Only Lu Tingxiao's eyes darkened as if he had expected this result. "What kind of poison is it? How do you know? How could Xiaobao be poisoned?" Ningxi asked a series of questions. Yin Shun put down Xiaobao's clothes and said, "I don't know how or what kind of poison he was poisoned, but I'm sure that he was poisoned." Ningxi was furious at Yin Shun's answer. She might as well not answer him. Yin Shun seemed to be immersed in some kind of memory as he slowly said, "I've seen people who were poisoned by this kind of poison. At first, they also had a recurring fever. What's interesting is that they had a fever on the first day and recovered on the second day. On the third day, they had a fever and recovered on the second day. Every time they had a fever, their bodies became weaker and weaker, and their spirits became worse and worse. Moreover, they couldn't find out the reason. It was like a game of torture. It gave people hope and instantly made them despair." Hearing Yunshin's words, Ningxi quickly took a closer look at Xiaobao's body. Sure enough, there were many red spots on Xiaobao's body. They had been there before, but they were very few. She thought they were caused by allergies and fever, but now it seemed that these red spots had been increasing with Xiaobao's fever. Who would poison a child like this? Tang Yu frowned. Tang Lang narrowed his eyes. This is obviously a torture method. Someone must have come to seek revenge, right? However, Xiaobao was usually so well protected. Previously, because of great god Han Zhao's presence, those people were all scared away. When exactly was this poison administered? None of us noticed it at all. Tang Lang suddenly had a bold idea. Could this poison have something to do with the person who sent Xiaobao back to the Lu family? Feng Xiaoxiao subconsciously glanced at Yun Shun. She deliberated over her words and said, "Actually, I've heard of this poison before. I heard that it can be planted in a person's body for a long period of time. It's possible for it to be triggered after 3 to 5 years. Therefore, it's highly possible that when Xiao Bao was first sent to the Lu family, he had already been planted with this poison, and it only flared up recently. If that's the case, then it makes sense." Ningxi had never thought that things would turn out like this. Because this matter involved Lil Bao, her mind was in chaos. Listening to Feng Xiaoxiao and the others' analysis, her mind was in chaos, and she couldn't think straight. "Little bastard, how many days have you been like this?" Yunshin suddenly asked at this time. Lu Tingxiao replied, 6 days. Yunshin's eyes flashed. 6 days. I know of people who have been poisoned by this poison. They all die on the 7th day, after the poison takes effect. Yunshin's words immediately caused Ningxi's heart to fall into an endless abyss. Ningxi said anxiously, "How is that possible? Doesn't that mean Xiaobao only has less than a day left? Could you have made a mistake somewhere? It's already the 6th night since Xiaobao's fever started. Didn't this mean that Xiaobao wouldn't live past tomorrow morning?" This result exploded in Ningxi's mind like a bolt from the blue. Chapter 2120. Yunshin frowned slightly and said in a low voice, "I don't know much about this poison. I'm just telling you my opinion based on the situation." For a moment, everyone was silent. Ningxi didn't have time to think. Her fingers trembled as she dialed Annie's number. "Hello, Annie. Brother Shi, you finally called me. I was afraid you were busy, so I didn't dare to disturb you." Annie's happy voice came from the other end of the phone. Ningxi interrupted Annie apologetically. "Annie, I'm sorry. Where are you now? Can you come to the Capital Military Hospital? I have something urgent to talk to you about." "Hospital? What's wrong, Brother Shi?" Annie asked nervously. "No. Anyway, come over here first." Annie was relieved to hear that Ningxi wasn't in trouble. She said, "Okay, I'll be right there, but I'm in Sidia now. I might not be able to come here so soon." Lu Tingxiao said, "I'll arrange a helicopter to pick you up." Ningxi immediately said, "Send me your exact location. I'll send someone to pick you up." "Okay." After the call, Ningxi's body trembled and she almost collapsed. Lu Tingxiao held the girl in his arms and looked at the time on his watch. His eyes darkened. It would take more than an hour to fly from City A to the capital by helicopter. As time went by, everyone's mood became heavier and heavier. Feng Xiaoxiao hugged Ningxi and comforted her. Xiaobao will be fine. Satan must be playing with you again to scare you. Ningxi closed her eyes and didn't speak. Although Yunshin was very unreliable most of the time, he wouldn't say this if he wasn't 100% sure about it. Therefore, she was sure that he was telling the truth. Lu Tingxiao had been operating a complicated software on his phone attentively, as if he was commanding something. After an unknown amount of time, a cell phone suddenly rang in the silent corridor. It was Lu Tingxiao's cell phone. Lu Tingxiao immediately answered the call. Hello. Okay, send it to me now. Ningxi's expression changed. What? Has the surveillance been restored? Lu Tingxiao nodded. Yes. What surveillance? Feng Xiaoxiao asked in confusion. Tang Lang gave a simple explanation. Once the surveillance is restored, we will be able to find out who took Xiaobao away from the hospital and sent him to the Lu family. At this time, Lu Tingxiao's phone was receiving documents. The progress bar moved forward bit by bit, and after a while, with a beep, the file was finally successfully transferred. Everyone held their breath and looked at Lu Tingxiao's phone screen. Ningxi's fingers tightened even more. Who was it? Who could it be? Lu Tingxiao's slender fingers quickly clicked on the surveillance video. The scene on the monitor was cold and deathly still. It was obviously a hospital morgue. The door opened, and a staff member walked in with a wrapped baby in his arms. He placed the baby in the freezer, then turned around and left. The moment she saw the object in the hands of the staff, although she could only vaguely see that it was a baby covered in blue and purple, Ningxi's heart subconsciously skipped a beat. Is that Xiaobao? Just as she was thinking, the door of the morgue was pushed open again, and a thin figure in black and a cap walked in. Because the man's back was to the camera, his face could not be seen clearly. It must be him, Tang Lang said excitedly. The man opened the freezer and took out the dead baby that the staff had just put in. Then he quickly closed the freezer and turned to leave. The next second the man turned around. Ningxi, Tang Lang, Tang Yi, Feng Xiaoxiao and even Yun Shun, who were staring at the video, all turned pale. Annie! How could it be? How could it be Annie? Chapter 21-21. Annie! Tang Lang and Feng Xiaoxiao cried out at the same time. Tang Ye's eyes behind the glasses were filled with shock. Yun Shun's face was also filled with astonishment. Ningxi stared at the frozen face on the screen. She opened her mouth, but couldn't say a word for a long time. Annie, how could it be Annie? However, the girl on the phone screen had a delicate and beautiful face that didn't show her age. Her appearance was almost the same as the current Annie, so they all recognized her at a glance. Annie's appearance was very young. In addition, it was probably because of her good medical skills and proficient in maintaining youth and health. Ever since Ningxi met her, her appearance didn't seem to have changed much. The little girl in her memory had always looked like this. Ningxi didn't expect to see such a face in the surveillance video that they had painstakingly recovered. Before this, she had thought of countless possibilities in her mind. There were countless guesses, but no matter what, she didn't expect it to be Annie. How is this possible? It can't be my little cutie Annie. Feng Xiaoxiao was a little agitated as she snatched the phone from Lu Tingxiao's hand and replayed the video. However, no matter how many times they watched it, that face was still incomparably familiar. It was the little sister that they all doted on, Annie. Fuck. Boss, is this fucking surveillance reliable or not? Tang Lang grabbed his head of mixed hair in annoyance. Lu Tingxiao didn't say anything, but his expression had already answered this question. He had personally watched this surveillance from the beginning to the end. It took the experts nearly half a month to restore it, so there was absolutely no mistake. Just when Ningxi and the others were shocked by this result, their minds were in a mess. With a ding sound, the elevator door at the end of the corridor opened, and a series of footsteps came from afar. Brother Shi. A cute little girl wearing a garden print cotton dress called Ningxi crisply when she saw her from afar. Then, she ran in the direction of Ningxi and the others with light footsteps. The moment she saw Annie, Ningxi's back suddenly stiffened. Tang Lang, Tang Yi, and Feng Xiaoxiao's expressions abruptly changed. Tang Lang subconsciously took a step forward and stood in front of Ningxi, adopting a defensive stance. Annie probably noticed that Ningxi's attitude was not right. She suspiciously stopped 3 steps away from Ningxi, and her clear eyes were a little hesitant. Brother Shi, brother Yi, sister Xiao Xiao. What happened? By the way, brother Shi, who's sick? Tang Lang and Feng Xiaoxiao exchanged glances without saying a word. Tang Yi pursed his lips, not knowing what to say. For a moment no one spoke, and the corridor fell into a strange silence. In the end, Lu Tingxiao took the phone back from the dumbfounded Feng Xiaoxiao and walked over to Annie, handing the phone to her. Mr. Lu? Annie took the phone suspiciously, then looked down at it subconsciously. His phone was playing the surveillance footage of the morgue in the hospital. When Annie looked down, she happened to see the face of the man in black after he turned around. Almost at this moment, the aura of this lively and adorable little girl in front of him changed in a split second. It was clearly still that immature and innocent face, but the innocence between his brows had instantly faded, turning into a bone-chilling coldness. That pair of clean and clear eyes were covered with a layer of cold and gloomy light. A treacherous aura with killing intent gushed out from within, covering the sky and covering the earth. This narrow and spacious corridor was instantly filled with a vicious aura. Chapter 21-22. Looking at Annie's change, Tang Lang, Feng Xiaoxiao and Tang Yi all subconsciously activated their nerves and defense systems. It was an instinctive reaction when they encountered a top master, and their lives were threatened. And this terrifying sense of danger, they actually felt it from the weak and harmless Annie, who didn't even have the strength to truss a chicken. At this moment, the phone screen in Annie's hand had been crushed and it was pitch black. The girl's indifferent eyes fell on Lu Tingxiao and she said, "The current leader of the Lu family is indeed not to be underestimated. He was actually able to do something that was basically impossible." She was confident that no one could see through the flaws in this surveillance video, let alone fix it. But now, it was actually exposed, and at this time, Ningxi, Tang Lang and the others were even more shocked when they saw Annie's completely different expression and her words. Did she admit it? The person in the surveillance video was really her. Behind Tang Lang and the others, Yin Shen slowly walked out of the shadows. "I really didn't expect my little you, to be so mysterious." She had actually deceived all of them. Ningxi didn't know how she came back to her senses. She used all her strength to take a deep breath and asked the question she was most concerned about at the moment. "Annie, did you poison Xiaobao?" "Yes," the girl admitted without hesitation. The moment he finished speaking, the few of them were stunned. Seeing that there was not much time left, Ningxi didn't want to ask about the cause and effect for the time being. She asked directly, "What will make you give me the antidote?" Annie's face was cold. "Ningxi, this has nothing to do with you." Ningxi clenched her fists and said excitedly, "How can it have nothing to do with me? I am Xiaobao's biological mother. You should know this the best, right?" Annie's face was still expressionless. "Then, you should also know that this child should have died a long time ago. I let him live to this day. Now, I'm just taking back what I gave him." Ningxi's body trembled and she couldn't speak. Indeed, Xiaobao had been declared dead by the doctor and placed in the morgue. At that time, Annie should have taken Xiaobao away and saved him. "Since you saved Xiaobao, why did you poison him?" Ningxi asked. "I told you, this has nothing to do with you," Annie repeated. At this moment, Lu Tingxiao pulled Ningxi behind him and stepped forward, saying, "Since it's between you and the Lu family, I'm the head of the Lu family. You can take revenge on me. Why do you have to make things difficult for an innocent girl?" Judging from Annie's attitude, this grudge was probably between her and the Lus. Hearing this, Annie didn't know why, but her cold face was suddenly tainted with a slightly crazy smile. Ha ha, innocent. Your son is innocent. Isn't my brother Qingze innocent too? If I let him go, who will let my brother Qingze go? At the last sentence, the murderous aura around Annie suddenly increased. Brother Qingze, Ningxi, Tang Lang, and the others fell into deep thought when they heard Annie's words. Even Lu Tingxiao hadn't heard of this name before. Who was this Qingze that Annie mentioned? Only Yin Shen's eyes changed imperceptibly when he heard the name Annie said. He seemed to recall a distant memory and murmured the name. Qingze. Yin Qingze? Chapter 21-23. With that, his sharp gaze landed on Annie. Could it be that you are? Annie smiled coldly. That's right, I am. At this moment, Tang Lang, who was listening at the side, was about to go crazy. What kind of riddle were these two playing? Who was Annie? Who was Yin Qingze? He had the same surname as Satan. Were they related in some way? Tang Yi muttered. Yin Qingze seems to be the grandson of the Yin family's patriarch, Yin Jia, Satan's cousin. At the same time, Yin Shen looked at Annie and said confidently, You're Yin Qingze's sworn sister, Luo Ling. Annie didn't deny it. She chuckled and looked at Lu Tingxiao coldly. Everyone from back then is dead. Now, only the Lu family is left. You're all going to die with my big brother Qingze. Heh, innocent. I want everyone in the Lu clan to have a taste of what it feels like to watch your loved ones die in front of you, and be powerless to do anything about it. Lu Tingxiao quickly pieced together what happened back then from the fragmented memories of the feud between the Lu and Yin families. If I remember correctly, the Yin family wanted to use Yin Qingze's death as an opportunity to ally with the other two families to deal with the Lu family. But after the investigation, we found out that Yin Qingze's death had nothing to do with the Lu family. The word nothing ignited Annie's anger. Nothing to do with it. If it wasn't for the Lu family, if it wasn't for you, Lu Tingxiao, big brother Qingze wouldn't have died. Back then, the patriarch sent me to assassinate you. I rejected the mission, so he killed Qingze. He told me that Qingze died in your hands. He thought that I would go after you for revenge. If it wasn't for you, big brother Qingze wouldn't have died. Annie repeated these words. Ningxi's mind raced as she processed everything. She frowned and said, That's why the Yin family and the Lu family are enemies. In order to deal with the Lu family, the Yin family sent someone to assassinate the patriarch of the Lu family, Lu Tingxiao. But you rejected the mission because you knew that it would involve selling your body in order to force you to submit, and also to have an opportunity to start a war. The Yin family patriarch did not hesitate to kill his own grandson, Yin Qingze, and then pushed all the blame onto the Lu family. But then you found out the truth. At this point, Ningxi's mind had already sorted out the ins and outs of the situation. Since you already know that Yin Qingze wasn't killed by the Lu family, why are you still venting your anger on the Lu family, and even on Xiaobao? Yin Shen's eyes flickered when he heard Ningxi's words. The atmosphere suddenly turned gloomy. Is this reason hard to understand? Because they all deserve to die. Everyone involved in her death deserves to die. Ningxi was surprised to see Yin Shen speak for Annie. Who was the she that Yin Shen mentioned? He was probably not referring to Yin Qingze, right? Yin Shen looked at Annie and smiled. I see. No wonder little fishy would stay by my side and secretly help me. So we're both in the same boat. Ningxi frowned slightly. She had just sorted this out. But her mind was in a mess again. Why was Yin Shen involved again? Why did he drag Yin Shen into this? The corner of Yin Shen's mouth curled into a mocking smile. That old fellow Yin Jia loves disgusting dramas like assassination the most. What's the big deal about sacrificing an insignificant grandson? Even if it's his only daughter, he can still send her to his opponent's bed. Chapter 21-24. Hearing this, Ningxi was shocked. She immediately thought of the grudge between Yunshen's mother, Yunlan, and Lu Chongshan. Could it be that Yunshen's mother had such a relationship with Lu Chongshan? Yunshen's mother had the same fate as Annie. She had been sent by Yin Jia to assassinate the Lu family, but the target was Lu Chongshan. You're much smarter than that silly woman. Yunshen glanced at Lu Tingxiao with a faint smile. That silly woman lost her body, her heart, and her life, but you killed everyone. Previously, I couldn't figure out who was the one who destroyed the Yin family. Who was the one who did it before me? So it was you poisoned the Yins, didn't you? Ningxi finally understood. No wonder Yunshen said he knew this poison. Also, the foolish woman that Yunshen mentioned was probably his mother Yunlan. Yunlan's mother must have loved Lu Chongshan wholeheartedly. Otherwise, she wouldn't have given birth to Yunshen. But Lu Chongshan, as the head of the Lu family, was willing to sacrifice anything for the family's interests. If he found out Yunlan's identity, she could almost imagine the tragedy that would follow. Annie didn't deny it at all. She just looked at Yunshin coldly. You betrayed your faith. Upon hearing this, Yunshin instantly laughed out loud. Haha, faith. What's my faith? Just like you, I killed everyone who was related to this matter. Indeed, he had once been like Annie, even though he knew that his mother had died in the hands of his grandfather and was killed by his family as a disgrace. However, when he finally gathered his strength and wanted to take revenge, he found that the Yun family had been destroyed overnight. From then on, killing Lu Chongshan and destroying the Lu family had become the only meaningful thing for him to live on. Until Yunshin's eyes fell on the girl next to Lu Tingxiao. But it was only for a moment. The man quickly retracted his gaze and looked at Annie again, saying, Previously, you were helping me by my side because we had a common enemy. But now that I'm working with my enemy, Lu Tingxiao, are you turning to Qiao Yi? Tang Lang looked surprised. Was Annie the one who saved Qiao Yi? Meanwhile, Tang Yi, Feng Xiaoxiao and the others were also dumbfounded. He had never imagined that what had happened to Xiaobao back then would involve so many people, and even the grievances between two generations. Yunshan's mother, Lu Chongshan, Qiao Yi, Annie, Lu Tingxiao, Yun Qingze. Suddenly, an alarm sounded in the ward. The young nurse rushed out in panic. Oh no, the patient suddenly went into shock. I'll call the doctor. Xiaobao. Ningxi's face suddenly changed, and she immediately rushed into the ward with Lu Tingxiao. Whatever. Let's get the antidote first. Tang Lang's face was filled with killing intent as he stared at Annie's direction. I don't care why you are doing this. If you have any grudges, just fight it out in the open. Using such a despicable method to make things difficult for a child. What kind of man are you? After Tang Lang finished speaking, he realized that Annie didn't seem to be a man either. However, he couldn't care less. He continued, hand over the antidote now, or don't blame me for being rude. Annie chuckled. I wonder, how are you going to treat me? Chapter 21-25. Feng Xiaoxiao advised. Annie, stop being stubborn and hand over the antidote. Otherwise, you won't be able to leave today. Annie's indifferent gaze swept towards Tang Lang, Tang Yi and Feng Xiaoxiao. She suddenly sneered. Just the three of you small fries? Why don't you come at me together? Together? Small fries. Fuck. Little brat. You're really daring. Tang Lang was so angry that he almost laughed. She was looking down on him too much. Even if Annie was an expert, and he could feel the familiar aura from her, it was still too arrogant for her to say such words. Seeing that Xiaobao was being treated, and the situation was getting more and more dangerous, Tang Lang couldn't be bothered anymore, and immediately attacked Annie. In the next second, there was a loud bang. Tang Lang was slapped against the wall behind him. Tang Lang clutched his chest in pain. Fuck. One move to kill him? Feng Xiaoxiao and Tang Ye's expressions changed, and it took them a few seconds to react before they attacked as well. In the end, the battle ended in less than 10 seconds. Feng Xiaoxiao spat out a mouthful of blood, and even Tang Yi clutched his chest as he took 3 steps back. Tang Lang's eyeballs almost popped out. Fuck. What the fuck? How is that possible? This didn't make sense. The three of them had guessed that Annie was skilled, but they didn't expect her to be this strong. She defeated Tang Yi, Tang Lang and Feng Xiaoxiao in less than 10 seconds. What kind of concept was that? When Ningxi came out, the first thing she saw was Tang Yi, Tang Lang and Feng Xiaoxiao losing to Annie even though they had joined hands. Her expression instantly changed. No one here could do anything to Annie. What about Xiaobao's antidote? Ningxi felt a burning pain in her chest because of her anxiety. She quickly said, Annie, you said this has nothing to do with me. Fine. I don't care about your grudge with the Lu family, but Xiaobao is my son. I can't just watch him die. This is a matter between the two of us. What do I have to do for you to hand over the antidote? Annie replied, You want the antidote? Sure. Just as Ningxi's eyes lit up, she heard Annie say, Defeat me. Tang Lang held onto his chest, which was burning with pain, and cursed in a low voice. Fuck, What's the difference between you saying it and not saying it? Ningxi clenched her hands into fists. Good. Defeat you? I'll fight you. Tang Lang exclaimed. Little junior sister, you're crazy. Lu Tingxiao's face changed slightly. Xiaoxi. Yunshan also frowned. There was no warmth in Annie's eyes. You're no match for me. Ningxi slowly took off her coat and threw it on the ground. How would you know if you don't try? Annie remained silent and stared at her for 3 seconds. Then she finally said, All right then, take 3 strikes from me. If you can still stand up after these 3 strikes, I'll give you the antidote. Ningxi. Okay. Tang Lang immediately exclaimed. Fuck. Tangxi, you're courting death. She almost killed me with 1 slap. And your small body will be smashed into pieces by 1 slap. Lu Tingxiao's face darkened. Xiaoxi, don't mess around. Lu Tingxiao, I'm sorry, but I can't listen to you this time. Ningxi looked at the man in front of her very seriously. You know, this is the only way. Xiaobao was in danger and Annie could leave at any time, and none of them could stop her. Chapter 21-26. After saying that, Ningxi took a deep look at Xiaobao through the glass window and walked straight to Annie. Let's start. You're courting death. Ningxi had just stood still when Yunshan pulled her back. Ningxi fought back and broke free from Yunshan's shackles. Get out of my way. Fuck. Yunshan was so angry that he almost died. He looked at Lu Tingxiao with fire in his eyes. Do you still care? Lu Tingxiao pursed his thin lips and his face darkened. Xiaoxi. The man was about to speak, but was interrupted by Ningxi. Lu Tingxiao, don't make me hate you. Lu Tingxiao's face turned pale, and he couldn't say a word. Then Ningxi glanced at everyone present. No one is allowed to make a move. She was running out of time. Then she looked at Annie and said, Annie, let's start. Okay. Annie walked up to the girl step by step, and threw a punch at Ningxi as fast as lightning. Puff! Ningxi was sent flying several meters away like a kite with a broken string. She hit the cold wall and spat out a mouthful of blood. Junior sister. Xiaoxi. Everyone cried out in alarm. Ningxi stretched out her hand and stopped everyone from coming forward. I'm fine. Tang Lang was going crazy. Fuck. How could she be fine? He had been hit by Annie's punch and knew how strong she was. Go on. Ningxi hobbled up to Annie. Bang! She hit her again. This time, Ningxi was knocked to the ground. She was motionless and blood dripped from her mouth onto the cold ground. She used all the strength in her body to force herself to a kneeling position, and then stood up shakily. However, it seemed that her body would collapse in the next second. She couldn't take the 3rd punch. She would really die. Idiot. Are you fucking crazy? Yunshan couldn't bear it anymore, and rushed straight to Ningxi. Ningxi said harshly, Lu Tingxiao, stop him. Almost as soon as Ningxi spoke, Lu Tingxiao stopped Yunshan, who was about to rush over. Yunshan looked at the man in front of him incredulously. Fuck. She's crazy. Are you crazy too? Lu Tingxiao stood in front of Yunshan like a stone statue that had been weathered for 10,000 years. He was motionless and looked indestructible, but in fact he seemed to be about to shatter into powder in the next second. While Lu Tingxiao was blocking Yunshan, Ningxi dragged her heavy steps back to Annie. The last palm. Annie didn't say anything. She just stared at Ningxi. After some time, Annie finally said, Okay. Everyone's hearts were in their throats. Tang Lang, Tang Yi, and Feng Xiaoxiao were already prepared to stop them at all costs. Finally, Annie made her move. Her palm, which seemed to carry the force of a thunderbolt, rapidly flew towards Ningxi. On the other hand, Tang Lang and the others noticed that the speed of that palm was simply too swift, and they were actually already unable to block it in time. Thus, he could only watch as Ningxi took the blow. The entire corridor of the hospital was dead silent. However, in the next second, what they had expected did not happen. Ningxi actually didn't fall after such a blow. Annie's palm was pressed against Ningxi's chest. If one looked closely, they would find that it seemed that she had hit Ningxi. But in fact, there was an extremely small distance between them, and it didn't hit her. Chapter 21-27. Under everyone's gaze, Annie slowly retracted her palm. She didn't hit Ningxi. Ningxi, you saved me. I've repaid your kindness. If there's a next time. Annie's eyes shone with cold light, and her killing intent was terrifying. At the same time, a small medicine pouch fell from her palm. Ningxi subconsciously stretched out her hand, and the small medicine pouch fell into her palm. Ningxi stared at the small medicine pouch blankly. This is, Annie sneered. Don't get me wrong. This is not the antidote. It's just a temporary medicine. Then she turned around and left. Ningxi was stunned for a moment and then shouted behind her. If someone can defeat you, will you really hand over the antidote? Since I said it, I will keep my word. With that, Annie's figure disappeared at the end of the hallway. Almost at the moment when Annie left, Ningxi was like a collapsed high-rise building, falling backwards with a loud bang. She fell into the arms of a man who made her want to cry. Ningxi raised her head and smiled at the man whose face was extremely gloomy. Sweetheart, thank you. Lu Tingxiao looked at the girl in his arms, and his body trembled uncontrollably. He wanted nothing more than to strangle her to death, but he held her carefully, as if he was hugging a pile of bubbles that would burst at the slightest touch. Just this once. Okay. The girl nodded obediently. She didn't have the same imposing manner as before. She knew that she couldn't take Annie's 3 strikes, but she was betting that Annie wouldn't kill her. Fortunately, she won the bet. Fortunately, Lu Tingxiao believed her. Yunshan almost cursed. A pair of lunatics. By the way, give it to Xiaobao. Ningxi hurried to the ward. Tang Lang hurriedly took the small medicine pouch from Ningxi's hand. Grandpa Shi, I'll call you Grandpa. Don't bother. Let me do it. I really have to give it to you. Hearing Tang Lang calling her Grandpa, Ningxi's eyes flickered, and she slowly took out a silver whistle from her pocket. Maybe this is Xiaobao's only chance. Yunshan glanced at the whistle with his peripheral vision. This is that gu whistle? What is a gu whistle? Ningxi did not understand. There is a type of gu insect inside this whistle. One of the whistles has a child insect inside it. The whistle has been specially designed to wake up the child insect after blowing it into the air. It will then send a message to the mother insect, letting the mother insect know the location of the child insect. Yunshan explained and then looked disdainful. This kind of old thing has not been used for 800 years. If you have the time to design this damn thing, you might as well buy a locator. Ningxi didn't know what to say. However, this thing was not only a whistle to her, but also an important keepsake. It represented a favor and a life for Han Xiao. Finally, this time, Ningxi personally blew that whistle. Then, she finally lost all her strength and fell into a coma. When Ningxi woke up, it was already the next morning. His entire body was aching. Ouch, it hurts. Tang Lang was sitting on the opposite sofa and eating an apple. When he heard the movements on the sickbed, he curled his lips in annoyance and said, "What are you howling for?" Feng Xiaoxiao had 2 broken bones, eldest senior brother had 3 broken bones, and I had 6 broken bones. You haven't even broken a single bone. He didn't even sustain any internal injuries. Just a little blood in his lungs. I haven't howled yet. What are you howling for? Hearing this, Ningxi touched her chest and her eyes warmed. Chapter 21-28. The more Tang Lang spoke, the angrier he got. Fuck. Why? Why did eldest senior brother break 3? Feng Xiaoxiao break 2. You didn't break a single one. But I broke so many. How did she rank the number of broken bones? I've always treated her very well, okay? This little girl is too biased. Tang Lang had an expression of extreme heartache and grievance. Ningxi looked at Tang Lang speechlessly. Did this guy have to be so biased? How is Xiaobao? Ningxi asked. Don't worry, he's stable for now. Alright, Grandpa is here too. He's with Xiaobao now. Tang Lang said. Great God is here. I want to go over. Ningxi hurriedly got up. In Xiaobao's ward, when Ningxi and Tang Lang went over, Han Xiao was examining Xiaobao. Seeing Han Xiao's focused expression, Ningxi didn't disturb him. Han Xiao felt Xiaobao's pulse and examined all parts of his body. Then, a disdainful expression appeared on his face. It's actually the method of Emperor Qin's bloodline. You guys must have offended the descendants of Emperor Qin's bloodline. But they're really getting more and more despicable. They're cruel to a child. Great God, do you know what poison Xiaobao was poisoned with? Ningxi hurriedly asked. Although Yunshin had heard of this poison before, he didn't know its origin. This poison came from one of the ancient martial families, the Qin family's secret poison. Han Xiao replied. Great God, do you have a way to cure it? Han Xiao shook his head. There's no way. I've said it before. I only know how to deal with external injuries. Moreover, the poison in this little guy's body was planted when he was born. It has already penetrated deep into his bone marrow. Moreover, the poison in his body is not exactly the same as the poison I know. It has been mutated. Even if I find you the antidote for that poison, it will be useless. Only the person who poisoned him can cure it. How could this be? Ningxi immediately fell into despair. Han Xiao revealed a suspicious expression. Strange, I took a look just now. Under normal circumstances, the poison in this little guy's body should have acted up 2 years ago. Why is it delayed until now? I don't know either. Ningxi was confused. Lu Tingxiao stretched out his hand and handed Han Xiao a small sachet. Is it because of this? When Ningxi saw that sachet, she revealed a surprised expression. Is that the sachet that Annie gave to Xiaobao 2 years ago? Lu Tingxiao nodded. Yes. Han Xiao placed the sachet in front of his nose and sniffed it. Then he narrowed his eyes and said, It is indeed because of this. This sachet is the same thing as the one used to alleviate Xiaobao's poison. However, it has already lost its efficacy due to the passage of time. The reason why Xiaobao's poison had been delayed for 2 years was now known. But Ningxi had a new question. Why did Annie deliberately leave this sachet to alleviate Xiaobao's poison? Maybe it's because it's not time to make a move yet. Tang Lang speculated. Ningxi fell silent and began to recall the scene when Annie first came to the capital to see her. At first, when Annie found out about her relationship with Lu Tingxiao, she showed great rejection towards Lu Tingxiao. She even warned her that it was not easy to be a stepmother, and advised her not to be with Lu Tingxiao. Later on, when he saw that she really liked Lu Tingxiao and Xiaobao, and that Xiaobao was so cute, he changed his attitude, and even gave Xiaobao this sachet. Chapter 21-29. Even though Annie's identity shocked her, they had been together for so long. Ningxi didn't believe that Annie didn't have any feelings for them. This was also the reason why she dared to take the risk. When Annie suddenly helped Xiaobao to relieve the poison, was it because she found out that she was with Lu Tingxiao that she wavered? She had no way of knowing. The most important thing now was to get the antidote. Ningxi took a deep breath and looked at Han Xiao. God, this time I may have to ask you for a favor. Tang Lang took the opportunity to come over. Grandpa, let me tell you, that woman is amazing. Damn, I was KO'd by her and 6 ribs were broken. That woman said before she left that she would give the antidote to whoever could defeat her. Grandpa, this time it's all up to you. Ningxi also shot Han Xiao a look. Almighty, can I? Han Xiao heard this and felt a little bored. You used that whistle. I will naturally agree to any request you make, but it's boring to let me deal with some trash every time. Trash? Damn it, 6 of his ribs were broken, okay? Annie was trash. Then what was he? Useless trash. Trash number 1 Tang Yi. Trash number 2 Tang Lang. Trash number 3 Feng Xiao. Tang Lang immediately retorted. She's not trash, she's really powerful. Big senior brother, 3rd junior sister, and I couldn't beat her. I think her martial arts level may even be on the same level as you. Han Zhao's eyes twitched. A bloodthirsty luster appeared in his eyes. In this world, I'm afraid the same level as me hasn't been born yet. There are only 3 of you, how are you different from ants? I can crush you with 1 finger. After saying that, Han Xiao yawned and his eyes fell on the KFC Deluxe family bucket that Ningxi had prepared. Tang Lang Tang Yi Feng Xiao. Damn it, I really want to beat him up. I just can't beat her. Just as they were discussing when to fight Annie, a series of hurried footsteps came from the door of the ward. Lu Jingli and a deputy of Yinshin Company rushed over at the same time, panting. Lu Jingli said anxiously, Brother, bad news. Take a look at the group's shares. Yinshin's deputy hurriedly said, Boss, our side has also plummeted. For a moment, a stagnant atmosphere spread in the ward. Lu Jingli then said, Byron Rosher just contacted me and them at the same time, asking us to meet. They came with ill intentions. Tang Lang directly said, so be it. We have so many people here, and the Almighty is also here. What's there to be afraid of? Let's see what those bastards are up to. After Lu Jingli finished speaking, he coughed lightly and said, also, the person who sent the message was Annie. Ning Shi and the others were silent for a few seconds. Although they had already guessed that Annie had teamed up with Qiao Yi and Lucky Queen, it was still a little hard to believe when they heard it with their own ears. Chapter 2130. The power of Europe's emperor had finally surfaced. The Rochester family was one of the oldest families in Europe. Its origins could be traced back to the Middle Ages in Western Europe. Since the 17th century, every family leader of the Rochester family had the title of Emperor of Europe. The family was in charge of most of the underground dynasties in Europe, and they were also the masterminds of some war-torn countries. The Rochester family was very mysterious. Even today, in the era of the media, there was no news about the Rochester family. Not to mention ordinary people, even some forces with powerful backgrounds might not have heard of the Rocher family. However, the Rochester family was like a towering mountain that couldn't be crossed. Even Lu Tingxiao did not have any dealings with the Rochelle clan. Ah, Annie! Feng Xiaoxiao sighed. She didn't know what to say. Lu Jingli's expression was solemn. It's obvious that Rochester is up to no good this time. There was no emotion in Lu Tingxiao's eyes. Address. Sky Spring Villa. Lu Jingli replied. Lu Jingli had investigated the matter when he received the news. The entire Sky Spring Villa had been booked by someone. There were no traces left, and he couldn't find out who it was. However, it was obvious that the Rochester family had booked the entire Sky Spring Villa. They only invited people from both sides. Lu Jingli continued. After all, as long as the Lu Group and Elon Ventures fell, the Rochester family would be invincible in Asia. They wouldn't care about the small fries. What are you afraid of? We'll kill them all if we can't do it. Tang Lang snorted. Tang Lang's real plan was to drag Han Xiao along with him. Even if it was a hangmen banquet, there was nothing to be afraid of. Before Lu Jingli could speak, his cell phone rang, as if it was urging him to die. Lu Group's big boy company, as well as many people in charge of the listed companies that cooperated with Lu Group, had been ringing off the hook. Everyone was unsure of the economic impact this time, and was anxious to see Lu Tingxiao. The situation in Yunshan was similar. While Lu Tingxiao and Yunshan were discussing the details, Ning Shi and Tang Lang looked at each other, and then dragged Han Xiao to a corner, one on each side. What for? Han Xiao hugged the KFC luxurious family bucket, his mouth glistening with grease. He was somewhat dissatisfied that Ning Shi and Tang Lang had disturbed his meal. Hee. Tang Lang rubbed his hands together. Grandpa, let's go to Sky Spring Villa to eat tonight. What's so good about these things? Why are you afraid of the Rochester clan? Han Xiao glanced at the two of them. Their little thoughts couldn't be hidden from him. Hee, with Grandpa here, wouldn't I feel more confident? Tang Lang had a flattering smile on his face. Han Xiao sneered coldly, and a hint of madness appeared in his eyes. Of course I'll go. It's rare that the Rothschild family is willing to step out of their nest. It was time to settle the old and new grudges between Han Xiao and the Rothschild family. Back then, Qin Yug's death was closely related to the Rothschild clan. This was an old grudge. All these years, the Rothschild family had been afraid of Han Zhao's revenge, so they had sent out countless assassins to assassinate him. This could be considered a new enemy. Grandfather, do you have a grudge against the Rothschild clan? Tang Lang noticed something unusual from Han Zhao's expression. Chapter 2131. Did you forget that the Rothschild family once sent assassins to assassinate the master? Ning Shi reminded him. Tang Lang suddenly realized that when they were in Deer Town, the master was heavily injured because he was ambushed by the people they sent. Even Ning Shi was not sure about Han Zhao's past, much less Tang Lang. The only thing they were sure of was that Han Xiao had a grudge against the Rothschild family. However, as for what kind of grudge would make the Rothschild family keep sending assassins to kill Han Xiao, this was a little thought-provoking. However, from what Ning Shi and Tang Lang thought, Han Xiao must have offended the Rothschild family before. After all, someone like Han Xiao who liked to stir up trouble and would find others to spar with when he was bored was actually a violent personality. It was not strange that he had offended the Rothschild family before. However, this was undoubtedly a good thing for them. After all, Ning Shi's whistle had been used to ask Han Xiao to help defeat Annie and get the antidote. As for the Rothschild family, Ning Shi could not ask Han Xiao anymore. Hee, with grandfather here, who cares if it's a banquet? Just eat and drink as usual. Tang Lang was completely relieved. Well, I'm going to kill someone, Han Xiao smiled. When he saw Han Xiao's smile, Tang Lang could not help but shudder. It was the first time he and Ning Shi had seen Han Xiao smile like this. It was extremely strange, like the calm before the storm. When Lu Tingxiao was done with everything, the sky was already dark. It was close to the appointed time with the Rothschild family. Lu Tingxiao looked at Ning Shi and said, "You stay." It was rare for Yun Shen to agree with Lu Tingxiao. The woman stays at home. Don't cause trouble. Even in China, the Rothschild family was very scary. This was obviously a banquet, so Lu Tingxiao obviously did not want her to take the risk. "No, I'll go too," Ning Shi said with a determined gaze. How could she let Lu Tingxiao face danger alone? In fact, tonight, Annie would definitely come too. Little Treasure's antidote had not been obtained yet, so how could she not worry? It's too dangerous, Lu Tingxiao frowned. Ning Shi put her hands together. "I promise this time, I'll be obedient. I'll listen to whatever you say. Okay?" "No." Lu Tingxiao's tone was firm. Ning Shi's bright and beautiful eyes suddenly became misty. In the next second, her tears fell, and she threw herself into Lu Tingxiao's embrace. Her little face stuck to his chest, and her tone was extremely pitiful. "But I'll be worried about you. If I stay here alone, every minute and every second is torture for me. Darling, let me go with you, okay?" Lu Tingxiao replied, "Okay." Yun Shen immediately bristled. "Hey, fuck. Can't you have some principles?" This damned lass was clearly acting. Was this guy blind to not see through it? Ning Shi was actually a little confused. Her sweetheart was really too cute. She had not even used 10% of her skills, and he had already agreed. Lu Tingxiao reminded him sternly, "Remember what you said. No matter what happens, don't act rashly." He knew that once Ning Shi had made a decision, no one could change it. Moreover, he had already secretly made arrangements for this appointment and made thorough preparations. Ning Shi nodded extremely obediently. Don't worry, grandfather and the Rothschild family have a grudge. This time we'll go with you. Let's just wait and watch the show." Tang Lang looked smug. When they heard that, Feng Xiaoxiao and Tang Yi secretly sighed in relief. With Han Xiao around, they felt more confident. Chapter 2132. Half an hour later, Lu Tingxiao and the others arrived at the Sky Spring Villa. The Sky Spring Villa looked the same as usual, but in fact, it was already under the control of the Rothschild family. Under the calm surface, there was a turbulent undercurrent. "Mr. Lu, Mr. Yin, please." Outside the villa, an old man with an Asian face immediately recognized them and led them into the villa. "Make yourselves at home." The old man led them into the villa and left. In the middle of the elegant little garden, there were 2 round tables filled with all kinds of delicacies. Han Xiao stared at the table full of delicacies. Without any hesitation, he randomly picked a table and began to eat and drink. "Master, don't eat it. What if it's poisonous?" Feng Xiaoxiao said hurriedly. Han Xiao was the main force this time. If he was poisoned to death because of his greed, how could they explain it? "Don't worry. Since Grandpa dares to eat it, it must not be poisonous." Tang Lang was inexplicably confident in Han Xiao. Han Xiao looked like an idiot with 0 life skills, but in fact, he was very meticulous. Han Xiao and Tang Lang ate happily, but Feng Xiaoxiao and Tang Yi insisted on staying put. It was better to be safe. Han Xiao, Tang Lang, Tang Yi, and Feng Xiaoxiao sat at one table. Ning Shi, Lu Tingxiao, Yunshen, and Lu Jingli sat at the other table. Lu Jingli looked around, puzzled. That's it. He didn't see anything special about the Sky Spring Villa. Even the Rothschild family didn't show up. What the hell were they doing? While he was puzzled, a flurry of footsteps came from afar. Mr. Yunshen, Mr. Lu, I'm glad you came. It's my honor. Accompanied by extremely fluent Chinese, the man walked out of the villa like stars surrounding the moon, and walked to the table where Lu Tingxiao and Yunshen were sitting. The man had a standard Western face. He was dressed luxuriously, and had a gentle smile on his face. However, there was a trace of malice hidden in his light blue eyes. Around the man were some solemn men and women in formal wear. They seemed to be the top management and elite team of the company. Don't stand on ceremony. Please take a seat. The man sat down on the main seat and greeted them with a smile. With that, he looked at Ning Shi in a gentlemanly manner and said, "You must be Mrs. Lu? She is indeed a beauty, just like the rumors say." Ning Shi blinked her eyes. Except for her typical smile, she didn't say a word and stayed by Lu Tingxiao's side, pretending to be obedient. At the next table, Tang Lang, Tang Yi, and Feng Xiaoxiao exchanged glances and maintained their vigilance. As for a certain almighty, as usual he didn't even lift his head. "Are you the lucky emperor?" Yunshen stared at the man for a moment and smiled thoughtfully. "I didn't know that the head of the Rothschild family in Europe would be so young." He was obviously doubting the identity of the man in front of him. The man didn't mind. He smiled and replied politely, "Mr. Yin, it's not like that. The European emperor is just a title passed down. I'm not the European emperor. Everyone is here." "Third young master, please speak your mind," Lu Tingxiao said indifferently. Hearing Lu Tingxiao say third young master, the man's light blue eyes suddenly showed a trace of surprise. Chapter 2133. The head of the Lu family was indeed not simple. No news about the Rothschild family had ever been spread, and no one had ever seen the children of the European emperor. However, the man in front of him was able to find out his true identity. "Haha, Mr. Lu is indeed well informed." The man smiled. "What's your purpose?" Lu Tingxiao went straight to the point. The man said politely, "Mr. Lu, Mr. Yin, I asked you to come here today because I have something to discuss with you." "Let's hear it," Yunshen said casually. The man didn't care about Yunshen's attitude. He wiped his hands with a napkin and said, "I hope to acquire Lu Group in Elon Ventures." As soon as the man finished speaking, a European woman walked over to Lu Tingxiao and Yunshen with two thick documents and gently placed them on the table in front of them. "This is the preliminary contract. Mr. Yin and Mr. Lu can take a look first. We'll talk if you have any questions or dissatisfaction," the man said with a smile. Yunshen glanced at the two contracts and sneered. Acquiring Lu Group in Elon Ventures. How arrogant. Aren't you afraid of dying?" Lu Tingxiao didn't speak. Instead, he picked up the contract and quickly flipped through it. Then, he put it down and said expressionlessly, "Sorry, I'm afraid I can't agree to your proposal." The man wasn't surprised by Lu Tingxiao and Yunshen's rejection. He smiled and said, "Mr. Lu, is it because the conditions aren't good enough? Actually, it's fine. This is just the preliminary contract. We can continue to discuss. Mr. Lu, feel free to ask for anything." Lu Tingxiao looked at the man with his emotionless eyes. Then, Lu Jingli walked out from behind Lu Tingxiao and took out two contracts. He said with a smile, "Mr. Byron, why don't you take a look at the contract we've prepared?" The man only glanced at the contents of the contract before his expression suddenly changed, and a dark light flashed in his eyes. These two small fries who didn't know the immensity of heaven and earth actually wanted to buy his company? They were obviously humiliating him. "Mr. Lu, Mr. Yun, I came all the way to Asia just to acquire Lu Group and Elon Ventures. Your attitude puts me in a difficult position." As soon as he finished speaking, the gentlemanly look on Byron Rosher's face disappeared, and his eyes turned cold. "Oh, what do you want then?" Deep Cloud sneered. The man's eyes were cold. "I just want the two of you to sign the contract. Otherwise, I'm afraid the two of you won't be able to walk out of this heavenly spring manor. Yunshin laughed out loud. Do you believe that you won't be able to leave China? A thought-provoking sneer appeared on the man's face. So what if I'm in China? At this time Han Xiao, who had been burying his head in food, licked the corner of his mouth and raised his head to look at Byron as he faintly said, It's nothing much. It's a pity that your father didn't come. I'm a little disappointed. Han Xiao. Byron stared blankly after seeing the person sitting in the corner of the neighboring table. He hadn't expected Cold Owl to be there, and his complexion finally changed. The only people he cared about here were Yunshin and Lu Tingxiao. He didn't pay much attention to the others. Who knew that Lu Tingxiao and Yunshin could actually invite this devil? He already knew that Han Xiao was helping Lu Tingxiao, but he didn't expect that with Han Zhao's personality, he would intervene to this extent. Chapter 2134. Unfortunately, the last time he sent out Xiaozhan, he still failed to assassinate Xiaozhan. Instead, Xiaozhan died in China. Byron's expression turned even uglier as he looked at Han Xiao, who had once again ruined his plans. Ha ha ha, are you surprised? Are you surprised? Are you excited? Tang Lang said smugly when he saw Byron's expression. Byron stared at Han Xiao with a gloomy expression and fell into silence. Well, it's rare that you guys are willing to come out. It saves me the trouble of going to Europe to look for you guys. Han Xiao stood up and yawned lazily. The corners of Byron's mouth curled up into a mocking sneer. Hee hee, I didn't expect Grandpa Xiao to have fallen to such a state. I'm being ordered around by two small fries. Back then, Grandpa Xiao claimed. Byron turned to look at Han Xiao. Just as he was rambling on, his lungs nearly exploded in the next second. Han Xiao didn't take him seriously at all. He was discussing with the group of people. Do you think his father will come out if we tie him up? Han Xiao stared at Tang Lang. God, that's not necessarily true. Tang Lang touched his chin. The European emperor has so many sons and daughters. I don't think so either. Feng Xiaoxiao also moved closer to Han Xiao. I agree. Tang Yi nodded. Then he's useless. Should we kill him or tie him up? Han Xiao looked troubled. Ningxi couldn't hold it in anymore. She went over to join in the fun and suggested, Why don't we tie him up first? Tang Lang immediately said, Grandpa, I think we should kill him and let him know how powerful Grandpa is. Feng Xiaoxiao said, I agree with little junior sister. Why don't we tie him up and force the European emperor to come out? Tang Yi said, I'm fine with anything. Byron was so angry that he almost crushed his teeth. These people were actually discussing whether to tie him up or kill him in front of him. Who was he? He was the future European emperor. Han Xiao, don't be too confident. As Byron's gloomy voice fell, hundreds of well-trained and fully armed European emperor's forces surrounded the villa. Moreover, there were many snipers lying in ambush everywhere in the villa. After knowing that there was a sniper, the few of them immediately tensed up. These were not ordinary snipers. They were snipers specially trained by the Rochelle family. Apart from Han Xiao, who might be able to escape, every single one of them could kill them on the spot. Tang Yi, Tang Lang, Feng Xiaoxiao, and the others were on standby when a familiar voice rang out from behind them, causing their expressions to change. Third young master, everything is ready. They saw Qiao Yi leading a group of well-trained killers towards them. These killers were almost all of Qiao Yi's elite troops. He had been waiting for this day. Ningxi looked behind Qiao Yi but did not see Annie. She could not help but frown. Annie didn't come? Or was he unwilling to face them head-on? For a time, the two sides confronted each other, and the atmosphere was tense to the extreme. It was obvious that Byron was determined to get the Lu Group and Elon Ventures. No matter what, he had to get them. If soft tactics didn't work, he would use hard tactics. Master, long time no see. When Tang Lang saw Qiao Yi, his blood boiled and his expression darkened. Traitorous disciple. Qiao Yi snorted coldly when he saw Tang Lang. At this moment, Tang Lang's eyes were completely devoid of his usual carefree expression. There was not a trace of warmth in them. Just as well, why don't we settle all our scores today? Chapter 2135. Xiao Yi looked at Byron and lowered his head. Third young master, I'm sorry for the embarrassment. I might have some family matters to settle first. Byron looked as if he had everything under control and said with a relaxed expression, Mr. Qiao, feel free to do as you please. Xiao Yi looked at Tang Lang and his gaze turned cold. Today, I'm going to clean up the house. Tang Lang narrowed his eyes and looked at Xiao Yi from head to toe. He was sure that Xiao Yi's body had not suffered any damage from Lu Tingxiao's torture. He was afraid that it was all thanks to that lass Annie. It just so happened that he did not want to take advantage of her. Tang Yi and Feng Xiaoxiao looked at each other with complicated expressions. They had been worried before they came, and now the thing they were most worried about had happened. Tang Lang and Xiao Yi clashed, both of them using their killer moves. Because they knew each other's moves too well, it was hard to tell who would win, and neither could do anything to the other. However, 10 minutes later, there was a clear change in the situation. It was as if Tang Lang had suddenly been released from a seal. He suddenly attacked fiercely, forcing Xiao Yi to have no chance to retaliate. Ningxi raised her eyebrows in surprise. Aren't those the Almighty's moves? A rare look of admiration appeared in Han Zhao's eyes. Not bad. You've learned a 10,000th of my essence. Ningxi, Tang Yi and Feng Xiaoxiao were speechless. With a loud bang, Tang Lang's thunderous palm struck towards Xiao Yi's Achilles heel. Seeing that Xiao Yi would definitely die, a figure suddenly flashed between the two of them and forcefully caught Tang Lang's palm. In that instant, Tang Lang and Tang Yi both took a few steps back due to the recoil. Tang Lang's eyes were bloodshot. Seeing that his plan to kill Xiao Yi had been foiled by Tang Yi, his face was filled with madness and malevolence. Get lost! Tang Yi threw his glasses away. You know it's impossible. I'll say it one last time. Why? Tang Yi asked persistently. Why? Tang Lang suddenly looked deranged. You killed my entire family and slaughtered my entire sect for him. Is this reason enough? Not only that, he had shamelessly taken him in as a disciple and made him work for the enemy, who had killed his entire family. Tang Yi wasn't the only one who was stunned. Feng Xiaoxiao and Ningxi were also stunned. Master killed second senior brother's entire family? How was this possible? Ningxi glanced at Lu Tingxiao and saw the affirmative answer in his eyes. Back then, Tang Lang had asked Lu Tingxiao to investigate this matter? Tang Lang laughed uncontrollably. Hee. Tang Yi, why do you think I beat you every time? Do you really think I'm gifted? Because those martial arts were originally the secret arts of the Tang family. The blood of the Tang family flows in my veins. No one is more suitable for this cultivation technique than me. Tang Yi stood there with a pale face, unable to say a word. He looked at the man he had always respected as a father in disbelief. Master. She hoped that he could explain that it was a misunderstanding. However, even though Xiao Yi had been exposed in front of everyone, he did not feel the slightest bit guilty or remorseful. He did not even refute. He snorted coldly and said, that cultivation technique would only be a waste in the hands of that useless Tang Zhan. I left his bloodline and inherited his cultivation technique. He should be thanking me in the underworld. Tang Lang's eyes were bloodshot. Then you can go to the underworld to receive your thanks. Chapter 2136. Evil creature, if I hadn't taken. Before Xiao Yi could finish his sentence, Han Xiao, who was standing to one side, suddenly walked past Tang Lang and stood in front of Xiao Yi. Hello, Han Xiao said with a sly smile. Xiao Yi was slightly taken aback when he saw the unfamiliar man in front of him. He knew of Han Xiao, but he had never seen him before, so he didn't recognize him. Before Xiao Yi could speak, the shadow of a palm suddenly flashed in front of him. Before the palm arrived, the wind from the palm arrived first, like a violent storm, causing Xiao Yi to turn pale. Xiao Yi didn't see when the man in front of him made his move, nor did he know what had happened. In an instant, the sound of a skull cracking could be heard. Blood flowed from Xiao Yi's eyes, ears, mouth, and nose. Well, I greeted you, but you ignored me. I hate rude people the most. Apologize, Han Xiao said. I'm sorry I hit you too hard. Han Xiao stared at Xiao Yi's body, his face full of innocence. Xiao Yi's body fell to the ground like a pile of mud. Even in death, Xiao Yi didn't know why. Was it because he was rude and didn't respond to this evil man in time? At this moment, Tang Lang, who had been acting like a madman, was completely stunned on the spot. My grandpa, my. Tang Lang gestured excitedly. Xiao Yi should have died by his hand. That was logical. He had been brewing his emotions for so long. And just as he was about to fight Xiao Yi, Han Xiao had killed Xiao Yi with one blow, making him feel like he had been fucked by a dog. But the moment Xiao Yi died by Han Xiao's hand, he subconsciously felt relieved and relieved. If Han Xiao hadn't intervened, he and Tang Yi would have had to fight. Tang Yi and Feng Xiaoxiao were also stunned. They didn't expect Han Xiao to suddenly make a move. Xiao Yi died just like that. Tang Yi's gaze trembled slightly. He clenched his fists tightly. But in the end, he couldn't say a word perhaps. This was already the best ending. Shouting, "It's rude." Han Xiao looked at Tang Lang. Tang Lang thought of Xiao Yi's fate and immediately choked, not daring to complain. Han Xiao, you're too arrogant. Byron's expression turned cold when he saw that Han Xiao was arrogant enough to kill his men in front of him. Humph, it was just Xiao Yi. If he died, so be it. After Byron finished speaking, the corners of his mouth curled into a sinister smile. Han Xiao, you should know this person, right? A black-robed old man holding a dragon-headed cane walked out from the crowd at a steady pace. Han Wuying. Han Xiao stared at the black-robed old man with a slight frown. Han Wuying, the patriarch of the Han clan. Han Xiao, for the sake of a woman, you've betrayed the clan and betrayed your master. Today, this old man shall clean up the clan. Han Wuying's hoarse voice was filled with coldness. Because of a woman, he betrayed his master and killed his ancestors. Tang Lang and Ning Shi were slightly surprised. They thought the Almighty didn't like women. Well, I was wondering why this kid from the Rothschild family was so calm when he saw me. It turns out that you're here to back him up. Han Xiao laughed in a low voice. Han Wuying, I advise you not to overestimate yourself. You should know that in this world, only Qin Wentian has the qualifications to fight against me. This wasn't arrogance, it was the truth. Even if the patriarch of the Han clan was here, he wouldn't be a match for Han Wuying. Han Wuying's expression sank, but he didn't refute. It was a pity that Qin Wentian was nowhere to be found. If he joined forces with Han Wuying, he would definitely be able to take down this vile spawn. Chapter 2137. Bastard. I just need to stall you until Byron finishes his business. Let's see what you'll do then. Han Wuying shouted, turned into a black shadow, and rushed toward Han Xiao. The two of them were engaged in a fierce battle. Kill them, Byron immediately ordered when he saw Han Xiao was stalled. The snipers hiding in the dark aimed their guns at Yin Shen, Lu Tingxiao and the others. Do you really think this is your territory? Yin Shen said with a cold smile. Lu Tingxiao was expressionless as usual, and his eyes fell somewhere in the dark. In an instant, hundreds of people rushed out of the villa and confronted the Rothschild family's forces. Byron was not afraid at all. He said with confidence and arrogance, "It'll only take a few seconds for my snipers to kill all of you." Tang Lang and the others quickly searched in the dark, trying to find the hiding place of those snipers. However, the professional snipers of the Rothschild family couldn't be found easily. Those snipers were like a ticking time bomb. Haha, it's too late for you to regret now. Byron's smile disappeared. Do it. As soon as he said that, a sigh came from not far away. The child has grown up, and his wings have hardened. An old man with white hair walked towards the crowd. Seeing the old man, all the forces of the Rothschild family were stunned, including Byron. Ning Shi was the most shocked. She looked at the old man and blurted out, "Grandpa Jez? Xiaoxi, long time no see." Jez smiled gently and lovingly. "Father, why are you here?" Byron's expression changed again and again. "Father." Ning Shi was stunned. Jez is Byron's father. Doesn't that mean Jez is the European emperor? Ning Shi was stunned by this conclusion. She felt as if she had learned that the sweeping monk in the temple was a peerless master. "Byron, you disappoint me." Just shook his head. and the unique dignity of a superior made Byron tremble involuntarily. Yin Shun and Lu Tingxiao looked at each other and understood the meaning of the European emperor's words. It seemed that Europe was not the one who wanted to annex Asia. "Father, listen to me, I'm doing this." Cold sweat trickled down Byron's forehead as he tried to explain. However, halfway through his words, he was interrupted by Juz. "Snipers hiding in the dark, come out," Juz said coldly. In the end, the air was completely silent. After a long while, a few people walked out with a rustling sound. Unexpectedly, there were only 3 people. Juz frowned. It was impossible for these people to disobey his orders. So what about the others? Juz pondered for a while and immediately understood. He looked at Lu Tingxiao and Yin Shen and sighed. The younger generation will surpass the older. His son's meticulous arrangements had long been seen through, and more than half destroyed. Byron looked at the remaining 3 snipers, and then at his father. He was completely confused at this moment. Damn it. His father had devoted himself to the movie industry, and had long stopped caring about the family's affairs. How did he find out about all this? "Father, if we annex Asia, our Rothschild family will become stronger," Byron said unwillingly. "Is this the reason why you went behind my back and disobeyed me?" Just shouted coldly. "Is the Rothschild family stronger or you, Byron?" Chapter 2138. Do you really think I don't know what you've done behind my back all these years? Child, you're too ambitious. Juz's eyes were cold. "Father, Byron was sweating profusely as he tried to explain himself. "Get lost." Juz's terrifying aura completely engulfed Byron. "No matter how powerful you are, the position of patriarch of the Rothschild family is not yours. Get lost. You're not allowed to step out of the family for the next 10 years. 10 years. Byron couldn't believe it. "Take him away. If anything goes wrong, you'll be responsible for the consequences," Juz said coldly as he looked at the group of people in the villa. "Yes." An old man from Europe waved his hand and said, "Take third young master back and keep an eye on him." "Father, I can't accept this. I can't accept this. My ability is the strongest." "Why?" Byron's hysterical voice became more and more distant until it disappeared. "Our Rothschild family doesn't lack ability." Juz sighed softly as a cold glint flashed in his eyes. "Mr. Lu, I'm very sorry. I didn't teach my son well, and caused you trouble." Juz stepped forward apologetically. Seeing that Byron had lost, Han Wuying immediately retreated. If he continued to fight with Han Xiao, he would lose for sure. Now that the European emperor had appeared, and even Byron was imprisoned, Han Wuying was no match for Han Xiao. He had no chance of winning. "Not fighting anymore?" Han Xiao stared at Han Wuying. "Humph." Han Wuying snorted and left the villa in a flash. "Running away when you can't win. How rude." Han Xiao was a little bored. Then, he looked at the European emperor. "Old fart, you've finally shown yourself." A sinister look appeared in Han Xiao's eyes, which had always been indifferent to everything. "Mr. Han Xiao." Juz looked at Han Xiao and said, "I'm very sorry about what happened back then. Although I've admired the ancient Han clan for a long time, and I admire your talent, and want you to marry my daughter, I've never forced you to do so. It was your family who killed Miss Qin Yuge to force you to marry my daughter. It had nothing to do with the Rothschild family. Besides, didn't you kill the murderer who killed Miss Qin Yuge?" Hearing that, Han Xiao was taken aback. "Old thing, you really know how to talk. That's the truth." Rosker didn't get angry. Instead, he calmly stated a fact. Ning Shi, Tang Lang, and the others finally learned of Han Zhao's identity through Han Xiao and Rochelle. The most monstrous genius of the ancient martial arts Han clan was greatly admired by the European emperor. Originally, he wanted Han Xiao to marry his youngest daughter, but in the end, he indirectly killed the girl called Qin Yuge. So grandfather actually has such a past. Tang Lang had a surprised expression on his face. "Go." At this moment, Ningxi suddenly realized that the clothing brand Ji was designed by Han Xiao. At first, Ningxi didn't know what Ji meant. Now it was clear that the word Ji was the same as song, and Han Xiao was doing it to commemorate that girl, whoosh. Right at this moment, a pitch-black figure suddenly appeared inside the manor. The figure approached Han Xiao like a bolt of lightning, and his palm blade, which was caught off guard, slashed toward Han Xiao. "Grandfather, be careful!" Tang Lang couldn't help but cry out in alarm. The speed of that figure was simply too fast. At this moment, Han Xiao's expression turned cold. "I hate sneak attacks the most." After saying that, Han Xiao didn't even turn his head and grabbed the small palm that was attacking him. Bang! Han Xiao's figure moved, and the figure was directly thrown into the distance. "Annie!" Ningxi cried out in alarm. Chapter 2139. Annie's body was unusually agile as she stabilized her body in midair and landed on the ground. She was actually able to receive Han Zhao's palm strike unscathed. Tang Yi, Tang Lang, and Feng Xiaoxiao were all shocked. Ningxi was also shocked, but at the same time, she heaved a sigh of relief. If Han Xiao had accidentally killed someone again, she would have gone crazy. "Looks like I have to do it myself." Annie's gaze swept across the crowd, her cold face devoid of any emotion. She had originally wanted to use Byron and Xiao Yi's power to destroy the Lu family, but she had never expected to alarm the lucky emperor and ruin all her plans. "Grandfather, she was the one who poisoned Xiaobao. You can get the antidote if you defeat her," Tang Lang hurriedly reminded. But this time, Han Xiao felt something was wrong. The moment Han Xiao turned around and saw Annie, his eyes, which seemed to be playing around with the world, suddenly burst open like a silver bottle, emitting a terrifying light. That exquisite and beautiful face was filled with shock and disbelief. Grandfather knows Annie?" Tang Lang was puzzled. Could there be a grudge? Feng Xiaoxiao murmured. Before they could react, Annie's expression changed when she saw Han Zhao's face. Looking at Han Zhao's expression, she wanted to skin him alive. Tang Lang suddenly came to a realization. There really is a grudge? Annie stared at Han Zhao's face, as though she had a deep hatred for him. She was so angry that her whole body was trembling. "Why do you look so similar to Brother Qingze? Who allowed you to use Brother Qingze's face?" Annie's brows were filled with a bone-chilling coldness, her eyes surging with a frightening murderous intent. In the next second, Annie attacked Han Xiao with a fierce murderous intent. Her fingers flashed with a cold light, and 5 unusually sharp hidden weapons appeared, wanting to tear off the human skin mask on Han Zhao's face. Han Xiao stood there motionlessly, as though he had been dumbfounded, as though his soul was in another world. Tang Lang watched from the side with his heart thumping. "Grandfather, be careful." "Fuck, what kind of deep hatred is this to want to ruin someone's face? Jealous of the Almighty's good looks?" Ningxi also exclaimed, "Almighty." Just as the blade in Annie's hand was about to pierce Han Zhao's figure disappeared like a ghost. Annie didn't even manage to touch the corner of his clothes. However, very quickly, Annie attacked even more ferociously. Surprisingly, Han Xiao only defended and did not take the initiative to attack. Ningxi was confused. What's going on? The Almighty seemed to know Annie, but his expression didn't seem like he was looking at an enemy. Annie acted as if she didn't know the Almighty. But what did she mean when she said that the Almighty looked like her big brother Qingze? Do Han Xiao and Yin Qingze look alike? Yin Shen said, "I left the Yin family when I was 10 years old. Since then, I've never seen anyone from the Yin family. I don't know what my cousin looks like when he grows up. However, the genes of the Yin family are not bad. I think he should look alright." Ningxi was speechless. "Just okay. He looked so much like the Almighty. His looks are definitely off the charts, okay?" Noticing that the air pressure suddenly dropped a few degrees, Ningxi quickly added, "Of course, no matter who he is not as handsome as my sweetheart." While Ningxi was speaking, the fight had already turned the world upside down. Strictly speaking, it was Annie who was fighting one-sidedly. Han Zhao's expression didn't change from beginning to end. He stared at the girl's face and let her attack crazily. Chapter 2140. The more Tang Lang looked, the more he felt something was amiss. "Fuck. Is it my imagination? Why do I feel that Grandpa dotes on Annie so much? It's so sweet that my teeth hurt. Ningxi. Tang Lang pointed and said. Look, just now after Annie's move, her body almost couldn't stabilize. Grandpa quickly helped her up. Don't think that I didn't see it just because you were fast. Aya. Little Annie fell into Grandpa's arms. Grandpa deliberately took a step forward. Aya. He took the opportunity to hold her hand. Ningxi was speechless. Stop talking, we're not blind. They could almost see that Han Xiao treated Annie differently. From the beginning to the end, he was simply treating her like a willful lover. The two of them showed off their affection for each other for more than half an hour. Finally, Han Xiao abruptly restrained the furious little girl, who was on the verge of collapse. He blocked her left hand with one hand and pressed on her right wrist with the other. It was unknown which acupuncture point he pressed, but in an instant, all the hidden weapons in Annie's hands fell to the ground. In the next second, Han Xiao held the girl's small hand and slowly placed it on his face. When Annie's fingers came into contact with the man's warm skin, the crazed expression on her face suddenly froze, turning into astonishment. No, it's not a human skin mask. This face is actually real? How can this be? Why does this person look so similar to Brother Qingza? At least 70% to 80%. But the temperament is completely different. A trace of confusion appeared on Annie's face, then her eyes instantly turned cold. No one is qualified to wear the same face as Brother Qingza. Han Xiao still didn't say a word, only quietly looked at the girl in front of him. In the next second, under the girl's angry gaze, he forcefully pulled the girl into his arms. Tang Lang. Wow, Grandpa is amazing. Feng Xiao. Aya, why do I feel that Almighty and little cutie Annie are quite a good match? Ningxi. Almighty, I asked you to help me get the antidote. Why did you run off to pick up girls? Suddenly being hugged, Annie's expression changed. How dare you? In the next second, she suddenly heard the man's suppressed voice. Silent song. Silent song. The moment she heard this name, Annie's face suddenly went blank. Her expression was dazed for a second. Why? Why is this name so familiar? Why was it that when she clearly wanted to push this man away, she couldn't control her body at all, as if she was extremely familiar with this embrace? Was it because this man looked too much like Brother Qingza? However, she could clearly tell the difference between the two of them. At this moment, she was not only familiar with this face, but also everything about this man. She knew that she should push him away and kill him, but this embrace was like a spell that controlled her consciousness. She couldn't resist at all. Hearing Han Zhao's quiet song, Ningxi, Tang Lang and the others were all stunned. Damn! What did Grandpa just call Annie? Serenity song? Ningxi nodded. I think so. Tang Lang was dumbfounded. Isn't Yuga dead? Ningxi. I don't know either. Fuck. If Annie is Serenity song, then wouldn't I have to call her Grandma? Ningxi. Can't you focus on the wrong things every time? Chapter 2141. Han Xiao hugged the girl tightly as if he was hugging his entire life. I'm sorry. It's my fault. I couldn't find you. Annie's face was expressionless, but her tears were completely uncontrollable. She didn't even know why she was crying, but when she heard the man's voice, the tears fell as if they had their own consciousness. Come with me. I'll help you remember everything. Han Xiao grabbed the girl's hand and quickly turned to leave. Ningxi immediately broke down. Great God. Wait. Antidote. Antidote. Han Xiao stopped in his tracks and looked at the lifeless girl who was being held by him mechanically. You go, where's the antidote? Annie stared blankly into the man's eyes, as if she was under a spell, and took out a small medicine pouch from her body. Han Xiao took the small medicine pouch and casually threw it to Ningxi behind him, then carried the exhausted Annie by the waist and quickly disappeared into the depths of the forest. Behind him, everyone was dumbfounded. Ningxi looked at the antidote in her hand and muttered, My great God is amazing. You actually used a honey trap to get the antidote. What's the relationship between Annie and the great God? Feng Xiaoxiao's eyes flashed with the light of gossip. That young lady seems to be Mr. Han's beloved Miss Yuge. But Miss Yuge seems to have lost her memory? At this time, Huang spoke up. Lost her memory? Ningxi pondered, and tentatively guessed. Could it be that Yuge didn't die and was accidentally saved by the Yun family, but lost her memory? The Yun family took a fancy to Annie's ability and adopted her. Because Yin Qing's appearance was too similar to Han Zhao's, the amnesiac Quiet Song had a natural sense of intimacy towards him. So she attached great importance to him. His death was a huge blow to her, which led to a series of extreme acts of revenge. Ah, no wonder Annie was so obedient just now. Is it because Han Xiao is her true lover? Tang Lang suddenly had an expression of realization. Feng Xiaoxiao murmured, I wonder what will happen to Annie and the great god. Ningxi held the antidote tightly in her hand and looked in the direction of the two leaving. I hope Annie can recover her memory. I believe that the great god will definitely have a way. After Ningxi finished speaking, she turned to the European emperor on the side and thanked him. Grandpa Juz, thank you for helping us in time today. If Juz hadn't appeared in time, even if most of the snipers had been eliminated, a bloody battle would have been inevitable. I've caused you trouble. Juz sighed. But I really didn't expect you to be. The producer she worked with, a kind old grandpa, suddenly became the legendary king of the underground in Europe. Ningxi felt that it was too magical. Juz smiled. I'm just a producer who likes to make movies. As Juz said this, he took a deep look at Ningxi and then sighed. Cece, you really look like Caroline. Back then, Caroline ignored my objections and insisted on acting. Just like you, she started out as a stunt double. She was very serious and worked very hard. She said that acting was her passion in her life. You're right. You're right. She wanted to get my approval. Unfortunately, when I finally understood her, she had an accident during a shooting. When I saw you, it was like seeing her. I have many sons but only 2 daughters. My youngest daughter, Caroline, ran away from home because I wanted to marry her off to Mr. Han. Until now, she is still unwilling to call me father. In the end, Caroline also died because of my stubbornness. She was too desperate for me to acknowledge her, so she worked so hard, which led to the accident. I made a mistake. The youngest daughter that the European emperor was going to marry Han Xiao was Caroline, not Caroline. They are not the same person. Also, Ningxi's background is not so complicated and has nothing to do with the European emperor. She is a member of the Zhuang family. I find that we are almost detectives, haha. At this point, all the puzzles have been solved, and the rest is a relatively easy plot. Chapter 2142. Hearing the old man talking about the past, and looking at his remorseful expression, Ningxi's heart was filled with mixed feelings. At this moment, the old man in front of her was not the famous king of the underground world, but just an ordinary father. No wonder he was so kind to her when they first met. It turned out that he saw the shadow of his daughter in her. Although Miss Caroline has passed away, she left the most beautiful scene to future generations. She worked hard not only for you but also for her own dream. I believe she never blamed you. Ningxi said. Do you really think so? Juz's eyes flickered. Ningxi nodded. If it were me. Thank you. Juz heaved a long sigh, as if he could finally let go of something. Then he looked at Ningxi and said, I'm going back to Europe tomorrow. Xiaoxi, if you come to Europe, be sure to contact me and let me be your host. I will. As Juz left, all the people on the king's side retreated, and so did Lu Tingxiao and Yunshan's people. The huge Sky Spring Villa returned to its former tranquility. The scenery was beautiful, and the flowers were fragrant. It was as if nothing had happened, and the only person who died in this battle was Xiao Yi. Ningxi looked at Xiao Yi, who was lying on the ground and killed by Han Xiao, with mixed feelings. Step by step, Tang Yi walked towards Xiao Yi, took off his coat, and covered Xiao Yi's body with it. Then he carried his body away. A teacher for a day, a father for a lifetime. Even though Xiao Yi had done that, Tang Yi couldn't bear to see his body lying in the wilderness. Tang Lang looked at Tang Yi's figure and said nothing. TSK boring. Having failed to fight, Cloudy Depths yawned lazily. The deputy who came with him hurried forward to ask, President Yin, what should we do now? The whole group has been hit hard, and everyone is waiting for your reply. Yinshin glanced at him and said lightly, Oh, then don't do it. Don't do it? The deputy looked confused. Yinshin looked at him with a smile. From now on, you are the boss. I am the boss. The deputy looked confused. What about you, President Yin? The white-haired man looked at the distant horizon. Go be a pirate. What? The assistant was dumbfounded. Hearing Yunshin's words, Ningxi frowned slightly. Yunshin naturally noticed her expression and said with a faint smile, What's up? Do you think I'm going to go back to my old ways and annihilate the Lu family? Don't worry, I'm not interested. This guy. Yunshin looked at Lu Tingxiao with disdain. It's too boring. With this girl around, the battle between them was destined not to happen. Ningxi looked at the person in front of her seriously. Thank you. Cloudeep's casual expression suddenly became a little unnatural. Idiot. I have nothing for you to thank me for. With that, he turned around and left. Feng Xiaoxiao hurriedly followed behind, waving goodbye to Ningxi. Little junior sister, I'm leaving now. Remember to inform me when the wedding is held. A certain someone who was walking briskly in front of her immediately turned around and glared at Feng Xiaoxiao with gritted teeth. Feng Xiaoxiao looked at him innocently. Did I say something wrong? Tang Lang shook his head and clicked his tongue. You're hurting me, third junior sister. That's impossible. Actually, I was prepared to write the ending after the war. But I had a premonition that I would be beaten to death. So there's still the movie killer, the announcement of our relationship, the wedding, the sweet marriage, and so on. The almighty and dark song will also appear again. Chapter 2143. After returning, Ningxi immediately fed Xiaobao the antidote. Xiaobao's body recovered. Ningxi tried to contact Han Xiao and Annie a few times, but she did not receive any news from them. As for the outside world, Lu Group stood firm in the storm. Foreign investors withdrew from the Chinese market, and the economic crisis gradually dissipated. Not long after, to the surprise of the entire business world, the powerful Cloud Mist Ventures chose to retreat at this time and completely withdrew from the Chinese market. Half a year later, a large-scale transnational drug smuggling case was about to start. What caught people's attention was that one of the criminals was the once popular actress in the entertainment industry, Ning Xuele. It was unbelievable. In a prison in the suburbs of Beijing, Ning Xuelua sneered at the person who came. Su Yan, don't even think about it. I will never divorce you. Su Yan looked at the woman who was full of hostility. There was no trace of her former gentleness. I'm not here to talk about a divorce. Then what do you want to say? We're husband and wife. I'm here to see you for the last time. Ning Xuelua frowned. What do you mean? Su Yan did not speak. Ning Xuelua seemed to have thought of something, and her expression suddenly changed. Could it be that That's impossible. At most, I only have the crime of drug possession, plus those illegal activities outside of the country. I only threatened a few people and attempted murder. Even if I am sentenced to 20 or 30 years, I will definitely be released one day. Su Yan's voice was emotionless. It's not drug possession, it's illegal drug possession. Ning Xuelua's face instantly turned pale. She said agitatedly, Illegal drug possession? What illegal drug possession? I'm just helping someone hide drugs. Those drugs are not mine at all. You're slandering me. Ning Xuelua finally panicked. If it was illegal drug possession, with the amount of drugs, she would be sentenced to death. No wonder Su Yan said that he was not here to talk about a divorce. Once she died, their marriage would naturally be dissolved. She could not figure it out. She couldn't figure out how the police had the evidence of her hiding drugs, and how they knew all of her activities like the back of their hand with sufficient evidence. She knew that those people must have betrayed her, but she could not figure out why. Even if those people were abroad and their whereabouts were uncertain, even if they were exposed, the domestic police couldn't do anything to them. But what good would it do for them to give this evidence to the Chinese police? Could it be Ningxi again. Did Ningxi bribe them again? After Su Yan left, Ning Xuelua insisted on seeing her lawyer. Will I be sentenced to 10 years or 20 years? How confident are you? Ning Xuelua asked eagerly. The lawyer's expression flickered. This? Ning Xuelua's blood turned cold when she saw the lawyer's expression. What's going on? Tell me the truth. She still had evidence of the Su family's bribery. Why did Su Yan sound so fearless just now? The lawyer hesitated for a moment, then said, Mrs. Su, I'm sorry but I can't help you. The Su family has connections in the government. I'm afraid I can't do anything about your case. You should prepare for the worst. There's someone up there. How can there be someone up there in the Su family? The lawyer coughed lightly. Don't you know? I thought Mr. Su had already told you. Mr. Su is going to marry the eldest daughter of S City's Liang family next month. Chapter 2144. What did you say? No wonder. No wonder the Su family was in such a hurry to kill her. They were going to make room for the new wife. Ning Xuelua's face darkened. I want to report him. I want to report Su Hongguang for bribery. I won't let them get away with it even if I die. The lawyer sighed with pity. Miss Ning, forget it. Have you forgotten the Liang family's background? It's useless. With the relationship between the Su family and the Liang family, you'll be stopped halfway. Ning Xuelua's face turned pale, and she fell onto the cold iron chair. Impossible. How could this be Su Yan? Su Yan, how could you do this to me? A few days later, the central square of the capital was crowded with people and cars on both sides. All the passers-by couldn't help but stop and look at the big screen above their heads. Intense fighting and gunfights, dazzling special effects, the reappearance of the classic plot, and the familiar faces of the Hua people. After the trailer ended, a banner appeared on the big screen. First day of the Lunar New Year, the killer, the king returns, stay tuned. Ah, it's Brother Shi's the killer. I've been waiting for half a year, and it's finally going to be released. But it's much faster than I expected. I thought it would be the same as Agents of the Thunderbolts, which would take at least a year or two. The crew is rich and the special effects team they hired is super awesome. Of course they're efficient. My big brother Shi is so handsome. By the way, who's the ice beauty fighting alongside Brother Shi? She's so beautiful. Well, if I'm not wrong, that's probably my brother Mai. Oh my god. Jiang Mai? Is this for real? That's Jiang Mai in drag. He's so beautiful. Do you still want us women to live? Ning Shi had just finished dinner with the crew of the killer. When she went to the hotel parking lot to get her car, she saw a man. Xiao Shi. Ning Yahua stood in front of her car nervously, as if he had been waiting for her. Ning Shi paused. Chairman Ning, what's up? Ning Yahua coughed. It's New Year next month. Ning Shi didn't know what he wanted to say, and just stood there quietly. Ning Yahua couldn't ask Ning Shi if she wanted to go home for the spring festival. Xiaoxiai, I've always wanted to talk to you, but you know, the Ning family has been in a bad situation for the past 6 months. The company suffered a great loss at that time, and your mother became more and more absent-minded. I really can't get away from you. Ning Yahua rambled on. In fact, after saying so much, the ultimate reason was that he didn't know how to face his daughter. Ning Yahua took a deep breath and said, Your mother and I already know the truth about what happened back then. We know that it wasn't your fault. It was Shui Luo who framed you. Ning Yahua looked a little embarrassed. I know it's too late to say anything now, but I'm sorry, Cici, I didn't believe you. Shui Luo's judgment has already been passed down, and she has already received the punishment she deserves. Ning Shi knew something about Ning Xuelua. She had just received the news that Ning Xuelua had been sentenced to death. There was no prohibition of drugs abroad, but it was very strict in China. The amount of drugs Ning Xuelua was suspected of was so large that she could be sentenced to death. You're tuning in to the Dreamy Chapters YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.